Hi, everybody. I think I'm officially live now. As always, just doing the quick mic test here. Tell me what it sounds like. Obviously, the video component is useless as per usual, but you can see what's going on. So, yeah, just give me a quick report there, and then we'll begin with the show. In quotations, because not really much of a show component. But, yeah. All right. Talk about donuts. Oh, Scott the Canadian's here. Welcome. Audio's good. Audio's good. Video's good. Mic seems fine. Okay, excellent. Then we'll just get underway here. So as per usual, all I really do here, like I said, there's not really much of a show to this. I just kind of do a live Q&A. You just ask questions, and I just answer as I see them. Anybody who super chats, or we introduced PayPal. A bunch of people wanted to do PayPal last time. If you want to do that, it's not required. It's completely optional. It's up to you. You can, and I'll give you priority. That's the best I can do for you. But it's 100% voluntary. You don't have to do that. Any amount is up to you. So we'll just get on with it with as far as questions go. So, who wants to fire first here? Sorry, I have the loudest keyboard ever. It's an old PS2 keyboard. Not PS2 the console, but you know what I'm saying. I wasn't quite ready. Okay. Adam, what do you think about the current game prices? Sonic Forces is 40 euros at launch, and I love it. Well, first of all, a channel about video games was one of the guys who came out to meet me in Berlin. I was in Europe briefly, and I did a meetup in Berlin. So first of all, thank you again for coming out to that. As for game prices, they've always kind of hovered around the same like $60 US mark. Adjusting with inflation and everything, games actually used to be more expensive than they are now. They're actually substantially cheaper than they used to be, especially with what you get for them. So day one prices on video games, especially as an American who can take advantage of like Best Buy's 20% off deals here and there, like I really don't have any complaints with the cost of your average video game. Where it starts to get complicated is when games cost a lot more than they're charging you for in a lot of cases, which is why they have to make money back on DLC and microtransactions and all that stuff, which is why you see so many like special editions that are really like $100 version of a game that comes with a DLC voucher. That's how they make more money on it, or any money, to be honest with you. So those I haven't quite, I never really embraced, and those kind of are unfortunate. But yeah, so the base price of a game is generally still totally acceptable, but you're getting less for that these days. What was the first console I cleaned and restored? Probably a Sega Genesis, because there's not much to it. You basically just... Actually, yes, I do remember that now. When I was in high school, a buddy of mine, he didn't want his old Genesis anymore because he said it didn't work, so he just gave it to me. And that was the first time. I must have been like 14, 15, something like that. I just opened it up because I had nothing to lose. And I just kind of thought, well, with cartridges, the way you would always clean them is you'd take like rubbing alcohol or Windex. I don't recommend rubbing alcohol. And you would take that and you just kind of clean the cartridge. And I thought, well, why can't you do that with the cartridge slot? This was kind of the early Google days, so not a whole lot of information was out there at that point. So I just kind of tried the same thing, and it totally worked. That was all I did, and I got it up and running, and he was like, how'd you get it to work? And I was like, it was really fucking easy, but it's mine now, bitch. You can't have it back. So yeah, I think that was the first time I'd ever cleaned a game console. What's my current Dreamcast setup? The Akura, the Toro, etc. So currently what I have, the console I have sitting out there is if you saw my previous episode of Playload, I got a Dreamcast in Austria from a guy named Jan. I'm going to do a video on it at probably next month. It's a Dreamcast that's modded. It's like a base model Dreamcast. In this case, it's Japanese, but he did a region mod to it, and more importantly, he did a CF card mod to it. So you have a stock Dreamcast that can just read discs, or alternatively, you can put in a CF card with a bunch of like preloaded games, and it uses Dream Shell, and it can read games off of that. So it's kind of like the GD USB or the GDMU, in the sense that it allows you to read media off of read games basically off of a device that isn't a disc. But in addition to having that capability, it also allows you to use the disc. It's pretty neat. It does have some flaws, which I'll talk about in its own video, but that's the current Dreamcast I have set up. And the way I have it connected is using the Acura. The Acura is, to me, the definitive way to use the Dreamcast video output. I mean, the Acura in itself has one fatal flaw as well, which is it's HDMI only, which means it only supports the VGA compatible games, meaning the 480p compatible games, which is the majority. But of those, there are games that they max out at RGB 480i with RGB SCART, and it has no output for that. Unlike, say, the Toro, which does. It's the Toro, right? Or the Hanzo? I can't remember which. One of them has RGB SCART as well as VGA output. If they made one that had HDMI output and RGB SCART output, that would be the definitive way to do it. Preferably with some sort of scaler in it. That way, you know, modern televisions would be able to use it more readily. Even if that doesn't really do anything to enhance the picture, it would be nice just for convenience sake. But yeah, so hopefully that answers your question. Why don't you like racing games? There's so many good arcade racers, so much fun. It's not that I dislike racing games. I like a lot of racing games, but I like my racing games to be more absurd. Like kart racers. I like your Mario Karts, your Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, your Star Wars Episode 1 racer. I like that kind of racing game. I don't like realistic racing. I don't know why. It's not like I have a pinpoint reason. It's just when I try to play them, like, this is dull to me. It's just inherently dull. Like your Forzas, not all the Forzas. I realize that the Horizon series is different than the regular series, but like, I don't know. I just never, your Gran Turismos, you know, those kind of things, like they just never appealed to me. Anytime I played them, I was like, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I need that quirk, you know, something more entertaining, comical to kind of make it more exciting. Because I don't know, in general, racing was just never that important to me. Do you support monthly payments for online multiplayer, e.g. Xbox 4 or PS4 or Xbox One? I do not have PlayStation Plus, if that's what you're asking. I do have Xbox Live Gold, but that's usually because I just get a free renewal for it. So I have it technically, but I don't use it to play online or anything. Which has the better library, the Saturn, I assume you mean, or the Dreamcast? That's obviously open to debate. You know, like there's no definitive answer to that. My personal preference would be the Sega Dreamcast, but I'm sure for every person that says the Dreamcast, there's going to be another person that says the Saturn. The Saturn has the advantage of sheer numbers. I mean, the Saturn had like over 1,000 games that the Dreamcast didn't have. But, you know, most of them rely on a necessity of understanding Japanese, which I do not. We just got a super chat from Joshua Finzi. I'm hoping I pronounced that correctly. First of all, thank you for that. Hi, Adam. I finally caught up on your stream. I finally caught your stream live. Any recommendations for HDMI switch boxes? I'm based in the UK. Well, again, thank you for the super chat. If you're curious what he did, again, super chat is a little dollar symbol below the chat. You can put in any amount of money. You help support the show and the channel and all that, because Adpocalypse is still killing us. That's a side story, but Adpocalypse has gotten even worse. Now they're demonetizing videos with no possibility of parole, meaning you can't fix or undo the error. And that was their solution for Adpocalypse, which is really just, now you have whole videos that make 0 as opposed to just less. Fucking YouTube. But anyway, to answer your question, there's an HDMI switch box I got from Amazon. I got 2 of them. Now, that may not help you being in the UK, but maybe Amazon.uk has the same one. They're by a company called, I think, Kinevio, something like that. Let me look it up for you. Yeah, HDMI, Kinevio HDMI. Yeah, that's it. Kinevio HDMI. In fact, I will put a link to the one I got in the comment thread here. Just give me 1 second. In fact, you're gonna hear you're gonna get the link before you hear me talking about it. But yeah, why won't it paste? I can't get it to paste. I don't know why. I'm just gonna type in the name of it, or I'm gonna try to. Seriously, copy. The clipboard is non-functional for whatever reason. Fuck it. We're gonna type it by hand. I don't even care. Kinevo. Now it won't even let me type in the super. All right, I don't know what the fuck's going on. Let me refresh the page. Yeah, this is welcome to the wonderful, glorious world of streaming, where you get nothing but technical errors galore, like the basics of not having your keyboard work. Okay. All right, now it seems to be functional. How wonderful. All right, there you go. There's the link. Okay, so that link is to an HDMI switch box that I bought. I actually genuinely like that one. I got 2 of them. What makes those great is that they auto-detect the most recently activated device. So if you have a bunch of HDMI devices all configured into them to feeding them together, then you never really have to switch. But in the event it doesn't quite work for whatever reason, there is a manual switch on it where you can switch between devices. However, I will warn you that I've had 2 of them for years and they worked great, but one of them just kind of quasi crapped out. It still works, but suddenly it doesn't work with certain things. Like, it doesn't work with the PS4 anymore, and it doesn't work with the FrameMeister, but it still works with, like, the Dreamcast and the Wii U. Why? I don't fucking know. But I need to buy a new one. I just haven't gotten around to it because I'm never home. In the proud tradition that has become my live streams, I have a flight tomorrow. I'm going to St. Louis for the Missouri Game Con, which, if anybody's anywhere near St. Louis and you want to meet me, like, that's the convention I'm going to be at. That was a lot of fun last year, and I highly recommend it. It's a cool, like, last year it was like a big show with just a show floor of games everywhere. Pretty cheap video games, too. Some good deals, really nice people. It was a lot of fun, and now it's 2 days this year, so I'll be a guest at the convention, so if you're going to be there, please come on out. And again, thank you, Joshua, for the super chat. As I mentioned, if you want to do that, you can super chat for priority, or you can do PayPal. The information on that is in the description. Again, both are completely voluntary, totally up to you. PayPal is preferred because they don't take any percentage of the money, as opposed to YouTube does take a percentage of super chats. But either way, totally up to you. Letting you guys know whatever you want to do. Does Scott know how to make maple syrup? Well, Scott the Canadian is actually in the comments right now. He's got the little blue thing because he's an admin, so he can probably answer that question. But I think by law, all Canadians have to take classes on how to create maple syrup, so I'm sure he does, at least, you know, unlike the way I can speak Spanish because I had to take a high school Spanish class. Like, I don't really speak Spanish. I speak high school Spanish. It's probably his maple crafting skills would be my guess. Will says he's been watching my content since I was 15. Thank you. I appreciate that. Although, for all I know, you are 16, so it hasn't been that long, but thank you. Have I ever eaten an entire family-sized pizza alone? I do not think I have, no. Thank you for the content. Thank you for watching the content. Did I back Shenmue 3 on Kickstarter? Yes, I did. I made a shit ton of videos about that. I did my fangirl video where I just like freaked out. Yes, to say the least, I did support the Kickstarter for that game. Do I own a Magnavox CDI? I assume you mean the Philips CDI, or at least the Magnavox version of it. Magnavox handled the distribution in North America, at least briefly. So their name is actually on the CDI over here on some models. That version is actually not very common. So if you're asking me for that, no, I don't have that. I do have CDIs, but they all say Philips on them. Or both of them say Philips on them. Scott says in response to making maple, he says, I can't say I do. Almost all the words maple syrup come out of are from Quebec, but I'm in Toronto, so no. Of all the voice actors who've played Sonic the Hedgehog, which one is your favorite? I can't say I have a favorite. The only one I can even name is Jaleel White, so I guess he kind of wins by default. Really stoked to catch a stream at the beginning. Love your streams, Adam. Thank you. I appreciate that. Have you managed to get an FM Towns Marty yet? What other consoles would you like to own? No, I haven't done that. I've seen one in person one time, and that was at Video Games New York in, guess where? New York City. And I saw that like back in May I was there. Ironically, I never saw one in Japan. But that's still my, I don't know. Actually, I would say the highest one on my priority list would be a Neo Geo CD. That would be a really cool thing to have. And I've seen those multiple times in Japan, but I didn't pick one up, you know, eventually. We just got a super chat from Daniel Turkic. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Thank you for the super chat. Hey, Adam, I recently acquired a Dreamcast yellow VMU without the easily lost dust cover / cap. Any idea of where to look or who I may be able to contact and search for my yellow dust cap? Oh, you don't have the cap. Sorry, I misread that. No, unfortunately, I have no idea where you would get the caps. Like, most people just threw those things away because when you were, you know, playing with them, you would have to obviously take the cap off to connect it to the controller or to connect it to another VMU. And most people, they just lost them, man. I have no idea where you would get one of those. I could see somebody making a killing doing like 3D printer replications of those things, but nobody has, as far as I know. I don't know where you would buy like replacement parts of that. Maybe eBay, but on such a rare VMU like that, not likely. If you guys aren't aware, there was with the Dreamcast, they had the regular gray VMU, but they also did, in the North America anyway, they did a series of different colored ones. It was green, red, blue, and yellow. The blue one is extremely the yellow one is extremely uncommon. So to lose the cap for it is unfortunate. But you know, that's how it is, I guess. Sorry, I really wish I had a better answer for you, but eBay, maybe. Thank you for the super chat. I've never played the games, but I would think that playing the first two would be needed. I'm assuming this is in regards to Shenmue. Yeah, it's a very story-intensive game, so to jump into the third probably would be a bad move. Like, I wouldn't recommend doing that for... like Shenmue 2, the Xbox version comes with like a DVD movie cut of the first game, which is essentially unwatchable. A lot of people play or watched that to try and get into the second game, and I was just like, no, play the actual game. I imagine that Shenmue 3 will be even harder unless they do some sort of HD re-release of the first two. Then maybe they can sell it all as one package or something like that. So that would be cool. I just got a PayPal donation from Cax117. Hey Adam, it's Cax117. Sorry I can't make it to the Missouri GameCon this year. I'll definitely try next year. Now that you have the Neo Geo AES SD, which it was the Neo SD, you should try Street Slam. I have it for the MVS. It's a really fun game similar to Street Slam. GameCube for the win. Actually, I'm not sure I've ever played Street Slam. No, it's really fun. So you said I should try Street Slam. It's very similar to a game called Street Slam. I assume you meant that it's similar to something else. But thank you, Cax, for the donation. Yeah, if you guys haven't seen it, you should check out my Neo SD video. That thing, it's a flash card for the Neo Geo AES. It's insane that thing even exists. And it's fucking awesome. But no, I'd never actually heard of that game. I'm assuming based on the name it's a basketball game. I like basketball, but playing video games of it has never really interested me that much. So... maybe I'll take a look at it next time I fire up the Neo Geo CD or Neo Geo AES. Thank you for the donation. Where is Chip? Chip is currently actually I'm not sure I'm allowed to say where he is, but he's where he is. He and I don't live in the same place. He lives in Austin, Texas normally. Currently he's not there. He's in a different city doing a different thing. But you know, he has a new job. That's all I'll say. He might pop into the thread. I never really know. How do I feel about the PS4 Pro and Xbox One S prices? Wouldn't a better comparison be the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X? Xbox One S is like, what, $250? And that's like usually with discounts, and especially with the holidays coming up, it's going to be cheap. That's fine. Although I would have told everybody to go and wait for the X as opposed to getting an S at this point. Price-wise, the Xbox One X is not unreasonable for everything you're getting under the hood. Although, you know, like I can't take advantage of it either because I don't have a 4K TV. So it's not overpriced. That's a term that means something very specific, and it doesn't apply in this case. That said, will it outsell the PS4 Pro? Probably not, because to the layman or to the mass market, whatever you want to think of it as, the PS4 Pro is more appealing on the basis that it's just cheaper. Microsoft, I will bet you, makes a really big discount on the Xbox One X at some point during the holiday season to try and push some units before Christmas is over. That's my guess, and that's kind of what I'm going to wait for. Like, I'm not going to get one when it comes out like right away. I have no reason to do that. But it would not surprise me if you get one, if you get like a $50 to maybe $100 discount, like a few weeks later just for the holidays. It would not surprise me at all. Microsoft has a proud history of doing that. I have water. It's got lemons in it. You know the routine. Will the Nintendo Switch outsell the Wii U in 1 year? It is possible, man. The Wii U sold, what, like 13 million units by the end of its life? And the Switch has sold, like, what, half of that already? It's possible. The Switch is selling incredibly well, and kudos to Nintendo, man. Just keep it up. Keep up the success. Don't fuck it up. But at the same time, don't get arrogant. Don't start making stupid fucking mistakes either. Deliver a quality product and quality titles. You'll be good. Have I seen the GameCube HDMI video adapter? Okay, so a ton of people have asked me about this. I've even gotten, not requests, but fucking demands that I make a video about one. And it's all like, I don't know where the hostility's coming from. I'd be perfectly happy to do that. I don't own one. I've was told that the guy who makes them was going to get a hold of me to see if I would be interested in doing a review on one, but he never actually did it. So it's an open invitation. If you have one, I'd be happy to do a video on it. That's it. It's just that simple. But I don't have one, so I can't. Do you drink anything other than lemon water and ramen broth? I don't drink ramen broth, but I do drink coffee, and I drink it by the gallon. I have some right here. We have a question about what my favorite coffee is. I don't... the Poop Weasel coffee. But I think I've explained that before. And if you just want... What the fuck did he just say? I'll explain it if you guys want me to. It's up to you. Favorite Wii game? Mario Kart Wii. Do you think Shenmue 3 will come out the Xbox after a few years? I would be astonished if it did. Unless... I would think ironically, I would think the best chance of Shenmue 3 getting on the Xbox brand ever would be if they realize that Shenmue 4 will never happen. That would be the way, because Shenmue 3 is a package deal over at Sony. Because Sony's going to be handling all the marketing and stuff for that game. They're putting millions of dollars into marketing, not development, marketing. It's two very different things. And that included exclusivity. EaseNet, who's making the game, to violate that, they would not make the money back on additional Xbox One sales. They just wouldn't, to push it out there and then have to handle the marketing themselves. There's no way. Especially with a Japanese-centric game that will not appeal to Japanese gamers on that particular platform. So the only reason you would see an Xbox One version of that would be either A, Microsoft came in and just was like, we will throw dump trucks full of money at you to get this game, which we know they won't. Or EaseNet recognizes that Shenmue 4 is not going to happen under the Sony system, and the success or the lack thereof of the PS3 or PS4 version of Shenmue 3, and therefore they want to try and make one last ditch effort. They might spend what little they have left just porting it to the Xbox One in an attempt to just kind of reinvigorate it, because at that point Sony would have already done all the marketing. It would already be over, and so that point you have no reason not to, and you can, last ditch effort, but I can't imagine that would really do anything. That's the only circumstance in which I can see it. If Shenmue 3 is successful on the PS4, then I can't see it having ever happened, because then Sony would have every reason to be interested in a vested interest in continuing to retain some sense of exclusivity, or at least console exclusivity, for a potential Shenmue 4. People forget, man, Shenmue 4 and even Shenmue 5 are kind of necessary, according to Yu Suzuki, to make that story finish. So, as much as I'm looking forward to Shenmue 3, we might have to go through that battle all over again. Chances of Shenmue 4 through 7 being released? Well, I don't think we're ever going to bother with 7. I mean, Yu Suzuki said he cut it down to 5. He can get it to 4. He just would prefer 5. So I think he got rid of the dream of a 6th and a 7th a long time ago. How many U.S. states have I been to? All 50 by the time I was 13. Lodmot, finally caught your Q&A. Well, welcome. It's been fun so far. Thoughts on the new Star Wars Battlefront 2? I haven't played it. I hope that they got everything right that they got wrong last time. Because I've mentioned this before. Star Wars Battlefront 3, as it once was was my most anticipated game other than Shenmue 3. Since 2005, when Battlefront 2 came out on the OG Xbox, PS2, that game, I just sat there and I waited forever for it. And then finally, years later, they handed it over to EA, and I was like, oh god, no. And then they make Battlefront, and I was like, this is going to suck. It's going to be a pile of shit. That's what EA makes. And that's exactly what they made. And, like, no part of that wasn't predictable. And I just... Supposedly, they're going to go back and address those things with Battlefront 2. So, we'll see. But I, at best, am cautiously optimistic. I'm not excited. Let's put it that way. Cax says he meant NBA Jam. Okay, so you're saying that SummerSlam is very similar to NBA Jam. If so, that's good, because NBA Jam was fucking awesome. How have you lucked out with so many trips and consoles as a child? I don't know. You know, shit happens. I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't have, like, a good answer for that. You know, like, who would? William says he thinks Shenmue is really overrated. All right. I mean, you're entitled to your own opinion. We all are, man. Can 15-year-olds be retro gamers? I don't see why not. I mean, it depends on what you think the definition of retro gamer is. If you're like, oh yeah, man, I'm a retro gamer, I'm playing a PS3, it's like, no. But if you're like, yeah, I'm sitting here playing, you know, fucking Super Nintendo, yeah, why not? Like, it just depends on what you think is, like, the old shit and versus what isn't. Do I have a Leapfrog? No, I do not. I know what you're talking about, though. Those little, like, shitty, like, portable things for little kids or whatever. No, I never took the leap. Pun. I never thought about doing that, no. If I weren't from Chicago, where would I like to live? Assuming I stayed in the U.S., Seattle would be my second choice. Incidentally, I'm proud to announce here that I have been confirmed I will be at PAX West in Seattle the end of this month. So, like, August 31st through that weekend and right at the beginning of September, I will be there in PAX. So if you're going to PAX West and you want to meet me, I'll be wandering around somewhere. Do I collect Game Gear, and if so, favorite game? I have a Game Gear collection, but I can't say I actively collect for it. It's more like games that just kind of found their way to me. The only one I'm actively looking for is Panzer Dragoon Mini, which was a Japanese-only Game Gear game. Very uncommon, unfortunately. How do you say SNES? Well, I don't say SNES. That's a very European thing to do. I say SNES or Super Nintendo. It depends. If it's literally written out as Super Nintendo, I say Super Nintendo. If it's written the way you wrote it as SNES, I say SNES. What car do you drive? I have a Jetta. Volkswagen. Can you say McDonald's? There you go. I assume you mean the way I said it in the Sega Genesis retrospective. McDonald's! Like that? There you go. Drink cucumber water. Fuck that. Cucumber water is gross. I don't see why anybody does that. Like, I like cucumbers. I like water. Granted, cucumbers are mostly water. But you don't... It doesn't need to be in there. Like, I've been to so many, like, hotel lobbies and stuff where, you know, they'll have, especially in California, they'll have, you know, water kiosks basically set up, and you'll see, like, a big vat of water with lemons in it. And I made the mistake once of looking at next to it, and I saw this one with green things, and I was like, oh, that must be lime. I bet this is gonna be really good. And I poured it, and I'm like, oh god, it's fucking cucumber water. It's gross. Cucumber water, I don't know, man. Not my thing. Not my thing. Lemons, though, lemons mix well, and so do limes, but they don't do limes. Is Game Gear region free? Yes, it is. Other than Atari Box, what do you think of Atari's attempts at revival? I don't understand why people think that's a thing. Like, it's just a name owned by a guy. You know, like, it's not Atari that existed in the 70s and the 80s trying to somehow, like, come back. Like, that's not gonna be a thing. It's interesting to see that somebody is pushing their name onto various products in some sort of attempt to bring them back through some sort of nostalgia, but they're not really coming back. The Atari box is fucking horseshit, and I kept saying it was going to be. It's a clone box at best, an Android clone box, and I think they're making like headphones or something. That's just some company has a product and they want some sort of quirk to make it interesting. So the guy who owns Atari says, yeah, you know what? Put the Atari logo on it. We'll call them Atari headphones. That's all that shit is. We just got a super chat from Kyle Broussard, although he did not leave a message. So if you come up with one, please do. Brandon Jameson says, do your damn Stitch voice and tell me what, tell me that the Wii sucks.
The Wii is fucking terrible. Even I, Stitch, a fucking rapist, would not rape the Wii. That's how fucking awful it is. I'm Experiment 626, bitch.
Stitch. My Stitch is very vulgar. I apologize for all the childhoods that were just destroyed. Does living in Chicago limit your possibilities of doing crossover videos with other video game collectors on YouTube? Not really. I don't see why it would. I mean, you're going to have to kind of refine that. Like, you might have noticed I go to a lot of places. I fly a lot. Like, I'm going to St. Louis in the morning. Like, every fucking live stream I do, I have to fly somewhere the next day. Just not because that's a coincidence, but I fly that often that it's like pretty safe bet I'm usually flying somewhere. So doing a crossover with people is not really hard. It's certainly never been limited by Chicago. In fact, if anything, it helps because we have the busiest airport in the world here, O'Hare. It's like not literally the busiest. I think Hartford in Atlanta is the world's busiest airport, and then O'Hare. But that point of that statement is that I can get anywhere. So it's really not that hard to do that kind of thing with other YouTubers. Most of the crossover events, though, just for logistical reasons, you tend to do at conventions and events where people are already meeting up. So yeah, I guess the answer to your question is no. But that said, there's not a whole lot of retro gamers on YouTube that I know of anyway that are in Chicago. The only other ones I know of are D-Dave, and I've done crossovers with them. But, you know, aside from that, yeah. How do I feel about sneakerheads? I don't have feelings about them. I mean, good for them. I mentioned this in a video once that, you know, sneakerheads is like a collector's thing, much like retro gamers are. Personally, to me, you know, I don't buy sneakers for collections, but I respect that people do that. But, you know, it's just not my thing. So more power to them. Most underrated Nintendo console, the Wii U. I mean, that thing got shafted and will be shafted by history for quite some time until people realize that thing was like the Saturn or the Dreamcast all over again. How much money would I pay to get Shenmue 3 6 months early? I would not pay anything. I want it, in fact, if anything, I want them to delay it further because I want to make sure the game is done. Do I have a Magnavox Odyssey? Yes. No, I have a Magnavox Odyssey 2. Not the original Magnavox Odyssey, but I have the more common second one. I have seen the original Magnavox Odyssey a couple of times. I've held one, but no, I don't own one. That thing is rare as balls. I don't think I'll ever have one. Kyle Broussard just did another super chat. Again, dude, I haven't seen a single comment by you, though, so you got to ask me a question or something. Otherwise, I can't really do anything with that. Again, you can super chat if you want, or you can use PayPal. Information is in the description. 100% voluntary. Totally up to you. All I can really do for you is give you comment priority. And, of course, thank you. Thoughts on the N64 controller Kickstarter from Retro Fighters? Okay, so I don't know a whole lot about that. I just saw a little bit of it. Like, there is an attempt to get a new controller made for the N64. I think that's fundamentally neat. I mean, a lot of people hate that controller, but I really never had a problem with the original N64 controller. But I could see why the modern gamer would like a different controller, because our hands have kind of gotten used to that PS2 and Xbox 360 style controller. So to go back to the the triangle, the Triforce, whatever the fuck you want to think of it as, what am I trying to say? The Trident. Just think of it as like the Trident controller is kind of hard for a lot of people to use. How do you use Super Chat? Below the conversation, there's a dollar symbol. You click on that, and you can put in any amount of money you want, from $1 to $500, whatever you want. You obviously don't have to do that, but it's completely up to you. You're just supporting the show, supporting the channel, etc. And I'll answer any question you have, provided it's not like really fucked up or something. And it's just a thank you and a tip jar, basically. And I'll give you priority as the question, because that's really all I can do for you. Thank you. Kyle says, my question was, can Raymond mod your NTSC SNES to play PAL games? I'm not sure if he's capable of that particular mod. I'm not really sure why you would do that. PAL Super Nintendos, you might want to just get one of those. I believe that the PAL Super Nintendo is a little bit easier to do region mods on in general. But yeah, to be honest with you, I never really looked into Super Nintendo mods, because, at least for region coding, because the North American machine and the Japanese machine are the same device, just with a different physical shape. And then as far as I know, there weren't really any worthwhile PAL exclusives. But for the few that do exist, even though I don't own any of them, I do actually have a PAL Super Nintendo, so that kind of like, all right, I guess I'm good. But yeah, you know, I know that the N64, that's really hard to do, but a lot of the Sega stuff was a lot easier, like the Sega CD, the Saturn, the Genesis 32X. Well, not the 32X, but the other ones are easier to region mod. I'm not really sure about the Super Nintendo, but I imagine it's quite doable. But I personally can't speak for Raymond or Ronald or anyone else who I know that does mods to say that it definitely is doable. Thank you again, Kyle. Have you still got that game console you picked up from the alley of your apartment? So what he's talking about is that a while back, I found, I believe what you're talking about anyway, is a while back I actually found a Sega Saturn in like the dumpster of where I live, in the alley there. And it was just the console. Like, I dug around for looking for everything else, but I found nothing. That was the only thing that was there, was just the console. I didn't assume it would work, but I thought, well, this is kind of perfect. Not only can I rescue it, but I can make a video and like do a cleaning video on it, and maybe we get it running. And it worked. It worked perfectly fine. So I imagine what happened was that somebody found it. I'm just guessing. I have no fucking idea. I'm guessing somebody found it in like a closet or something, and there was nothing else there, and they had no controllers or cables or games or anything, and they just decided, I don't know what this is. I don't know why we need this. And they just tossed it. Because you probably, you know, most people, your average person isn't going to think to try and resell something like that. It's not going to be worth their time. So, yeah, I got lucky with that one. So, yes, I still do have it, by the way. We just got a PayPal donation from Joshua again, Joshua Finzi, who says, do you know any modders in the UK or Europe? I want to soft mod my Wii U. I know that that's apparently super easy to do now, but I absolutely suck at this kind of thing. Okay, so two parts to that. Funny enough, most of the modders I know are only in Europe. I know a guy named Raymond who lives in Wales in the UK. He's very good. And another dude I would recommend is a guy named Ronald who lives in Austria. I'm happy to give you contact information for either of them. Ronald would probably be a tad easier to get a hold of if you want to do that. I see that you gave me your email address, so tell you what, I will... actually, Ronald might pop in here later. I'm going to make a note to contact you via email with Ronald's information, and you can seek him out in Austria. But the problem with the Wii U modification you're talking about is that was a firmware hack, basically, where Nintendo basically didn't update the Wii U from January of 2016 onward. They didn't update it. So people found out, you know, basically had a ton of time to play with it and did browser exploits and all this stuff. And they found ways to hack it. Unfortunately, last month, Nintendo firmware updated the console to prevent that hack from working anymore. It doesn't do anything beyond that. So if you don't have the latest firmware update, it might still be possible to get yours to work. But if you've updated it in the last month or so, you may not be capable of doing that. We got another super chat from Laudmont. Welcome back. Laudmont's a common super chatter. Thank you. I appreciate that. He says, hey, what do you think of the Xbox Duke controller remake that's coming out soon? It has the screen in the center of it. Kind of reminds me of something else. Well, okay. First of all, yes, Microsoft is going to be putting out a remake of the original Duke Xbox OG controller for the Xbox One no doubt because of the Xbox One backwards compatibility that's coming for the OG Xbox games. Although how many games will actually happen is a different issue or debate altogether. But it's coming. I did not know it's going to have a screen in the center of it, but that is funny because you're pointing out the obvious that it looks like a Dreamcast controller, I'm guessing. And the reason that's really funny is when Microsoft was making the Duke controller, they modeled it off of the Dreamcast controller. So it's really kind of coming full circle there. That's pretty funny. Thank you for the super chat. The question is, can I send super chat on my phone? I assume so. I'm not 100% sure, but I imagine that you can. But it's probably easier on a computer. Like I said, I also do PayPal if you want. I mean, I never used to do PayPal at all until people started specifically saying they wanted to do PayPal instead. So information on PayPal is in the description. But again, it's completely voluntary, guys. And you don't have to do it. It's 100% your choice. You need PS2 FAT for free McBoot. I don't think you need it. I think there are certain versions of the PS2 that do work with the slim model that do work with free McBoot, but I think all fat models do, so it's a safer bet to do that. Where am I at? It's not my regular background. I'm at home. This is my regular background. That's the fucked up jersey and everything. Are you guys having like issues with the stream? I am having issues with it where the chat just stops and then I have to reload. So I apologize because I'm kind of like dealing with technical crap while also doing the conversation. Add a Hat just joined us apparently. Jesus. Okay, so he just donated. The Swedish kroner, right? I remember this, but it's people look at it and they think it's $1,000. That is not $1,000. You have to go to currency calculator to see what that really is. He said, first of all, thank you for the super chat. He says, hey man, here's the usual payday for you, my friend. Please do Pat's podcast. I got your back in this adpocalypse. Also, don't do a Q&A too often because I will go broke. Just kidding. Love from Sweden. Well, again, thank you. Like I said, he shows up and he's very, very generous, as you can see. So thank you for that. What he's referring to is, in the case of Pat's podcast, is Pat Contry. You guys probably know him as Pat the NES Punk. He has the Completely Unnecessary podcast, Cup podcast. I thought when I know him, I've hung out with him a few times at different conventions and so on. And when I last saw him was at Too Many Games in Philadelphia. We were just chatting, and he was talking to someone else about me in front of me. It's like he was totally aware I could hear him. And he basically was talking about his podcast, and he said, yeah, and then I'm gonna have Adam on. I'm gonna bring Adam on to my podcast, no problem. And I was just like, I thought he was kidding. I did not think he was serious. So I was like, yeah, man, all right, I'll do it, whatever. But you know, it was just, that was kind of the end of it. And then I never contacted him about it because I figured, like I said, he was kidding. So then I mentioned it in a live stream, and a bunch of people, I guess, went off and asked him like, well, are you gonna have him on or not? And he said, yeah, yeah, sure, why not? I'll have him on. So I was like, okay. I just haven't had the time to do it. My schedule has been absolutely nuts. Let me give you a small sense of what it has been like. So this summer, I went to Europe. I went to Poland, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and the Czech Republic. I got back. I was home for like a day or two. And then I went off to Denver for like a week. Then I came back and then I had to go to Wisconsin for a few days. I just got back yesterday. And tomorrow I go off to St. Louis for the weekend for a convention, the Missouri Game Con. Please come out. And then when I get back from that, I'm home for like a day or so. Then I'm off to San Francisco for a couple days. Then I come back home for a few days. And right now this is very tentative, but I might be going to Dallas for a couple of days. Then I come back. Then I'll be home for a few days. Then I'm off to Seattle for PAX West. That's definitely happening, and I'll be there for like a week. And then I get back from Seattle, and I'm home for a couple days, and then I'm off to Parsippany, New Jersey for AVGC. That's just what I know right now. So like, my schedule is nuts enough that I don't want to have to make other people deal with it, you know? So when I do videos, I have to do my best to make videos in advance on this channel and just kind of have them ready to go. So when I have those downtimes at home, most of that time is spent just fucking making some videos for content. It's complicated. It's hard. So my point of that story though is essentially that I have no idea when I would configure that kind of thing with him. But you know what? If you guys really want me to, I'll ask him about it. I'd be happy to do the show. I just have no idea like when our schedules would sync up. But yeah, of course, I'd absolutely love to go on that. Also just got a PayPal donation from a David Robitali. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Okay, his question is very, very, very OG. His question is, has your sister found out about her missing PC? So for those who I'm sure have no idea, I did a video in like 2012. I mean, this is going way back. A video that was a response video called What's in Your PC? And it was all about just show what kind of PC collection you have. So I just showed the few computers I had at the time, one of which was an old Windows XP PC that my sister had used in college and was no longer using. So I had taken it and I had brought it here and I was using it for extra purposes at the time. And I said in the video, it's funny because I'd had that computer at that point in my possession for like a year and she still hadn't noticed it was missing. So as far as I know, to this day, what happened to that PC is it ended up back at my house, the same house where it had come from, and it's just sitting there in my room at that house, not connected, not doing anything. It's just sitting there collecting dust, basically. To this day, I've never heard anything about it from her. So I guess to answer your question, no, she has no idea that it's missing. I'm sure she doesn't give two fucks. But yeah, thank you for the donation. White Knight says, is Adam traveling somewhere? Yes, I'm going to St. Louis tomorrow. What gave it away? 2012 is not that long ago. It's 5 years ago, man. It's funny to me that people would retain such an obscure piece of information like that. What is your recommended obscure game console if I were to get one? What do you mean by that? Like, obviously I understand what obscure means, but like, do you mean what's a good game console no one has that has all these great games that no one's ever heard of? Or do you mean like, what's a fucked up weird console no one has and it's just weird to own and that's why it's cool? It's hard to say. Like, obscure has different definitions depending on who you ask in this context. I would say in this context, obscure essentially means something the mainstream gamers would not know. For example, as weird as it might sound to any of us, most people have never heard of like the Neo Geo CD. I mean, it's a console even I don't own, but I've heard of it. I want it. I've never, but I don't have it. That's one I would recommend to get for purposes of entertainment, because it has a quality library of games that generally are exclusive, relatively exclusive within the Neo Geo library, and their quality. But that's a different question than something that's obscure and just weird to have for the sake of having it because it's so obscure. In that context, I would say something like the Amiga CD32, or the ultimate holy grail, in my opinion, is the Apple Pippin. Even though I don't like Apple products, it is funny that Apple made a console. Apple made a home console, and no one knows they did it. And then the story around its entire existence is just fascinating. But does it have anything worth playing? No. Why do you do live streams before you go on trips? It's just a coincidence. Obviously, the day before I go out on a trip is the day I can most guarantee that I will be at home because I haven't gone on the trip yet. You guys don't understand how often I fly. Like, I am constantly not here. So when I am at home, which exists in short blocks, I try to do my best to get videos done in preparation for the next month or two. And then I try desperately to get one live stream done per month. But then I also know my flight paths generally are what they're going to be. So then I have to kind of, pick a day that I'm going to be here, that I have completed all my work, and that I'll have time to do the stream. And logically so, what happens is that they get sandwiched in the middle because I finish all the pre-shoot work before I go on the trip, but then there's inevitably a day in between where I don't have anything really to do because I haven't gone on the trip yet, but I have completed the work. Thus, you have the live stream day. So I never really get to stop working, if you want to think of it that way. People call them trips. They're not vacations. Like, I'm going to the Missouri Game Con. I'm a guest. I'm going to be there. Yes, I do technically go somewhere, but it's essentially a job. Like, I go there. I do get to have fun, yes, but that's what I'm doing for work. I'm going down there. I'm meeting people. I'm hanging out. I'm having a good time with other people. I know that sounds like a weird job because it fundamentally is, but it is what it is. We also just got a super chat from Taco Man. Didn't say anything, so he followed it up with a different question. 4K 30 FPS or 1080p 60 frames per second? I'm going to go with probably the unpopular answer here. I'm going to go 1080p 60 frames per second. I'd rather have the smoother frame rate than just giant resolution for the sake of giant resolution. Not that I've ever had any issues playing something at 30 frames per second, of course, but I guess my answer would be more based on the fact that I simply don't own a 4K TV. But my television is capable of 1080p and 60 frames per second. If I had a 4K TV, potentially my answer would change. So there you go. And thank you for the super chat. You're discussing whatever we want. Yes, Alden. Yes, I am. Especially super chatters or PayPal donations. They get really whatever they want, unless it's like really offensive or something. But in general, just whatever comment, question, catches my eye, I just kind of go for it. CRT or XRGB Mini, XRGB Mini in my case, because going through FrameMeister, being able to use it and have it look beautiful on a high definition television, all the way, man, all the way. That's my shit. Like, I know a lot of people prefer CRTs for, I guess I would even go so far as to say nostalgia's sake. I know a lot of people will argue they are actually better visually. I will dispute that with my own opinion, because it's up to your eyes at the end of the day. And for my case, I'm going to go with XRGB Mini because the FrameMeister makes everything look beautiful, especially when connected correctly. And it's so fucking convenient. Expensive, yes, no dispute. But convenient once you have it, yes. What airlines do I use? It really depends on the event or the convention or whatever the activity is. They typically give you options. Here's the thing. I know a lot of people think like, wow, you've been flying all over the place. That must be like really expensive. Dude, I don't pay for flights. Like, all my shit is covered by, like, when you go to a convention as a guest or you go to an event as a guest, they cover that for you, because that's how they compensate you basically for your time. So yeah, you don't pay out of pocket. Like, I'm like the convention in St. Louis I'm going to, they paid for the flight. I'm not paying for the flight. In that case, I'll be flying on United Airlines, which I love United Airlines. I know people gave them a lot of shit, and I've said this many times, but I will gladly take a punch in the face to not fly American Airlines. I fucking hate American Airlines. Yeah, if you're just talking about airlines, United's my favorite. Virgin Airlines is pretty cool. Alaska Airlines is great. American Airlines is awful, but they're still better than shitholes like Frontier Airlines. Frontier Airlines is by far the worst airline I have ever flown on in my entire life. That's the only time I've ever been on a flight where they just decided to change the destination, like right before we left. Like, we were supposed to go to Philadelphia, and they decided to land in Trenton, New Jersey. And it's like, what are we gonna do? It's like, you're on a flying bus, man. Like, we don't really give a shit what happens. There's a reason your flight was super fucking cheap. So you just kind of have to suck it and deal with it. Frontier, and it's not like we were rerouted because of weather. They just decided to land somewhere else. And then, how do we get to Philly? I don't know. It's on your own. Fuck you. So fuck that. I'm not a fan of Frontier Airlines. Blake says, Adam, are there any video games that you will play for hours on end recreationally? The last one I played on end for recreational purposes was Far Cry 4. And it wasn't when Far Cry 4 came out. It was within the last 6 months. It was just, I just had some time and I was like, this is what I want to play. This is just, I feel like going in and killing, all those fucking guys, and that's, hunting animals and stuff. Like, that's just what I feel like doing right now. But I don't usually get enough downtime to actually play stuff for long recreational periods. I wish I could, but I never get to. Have I ever heard of the Bandai Playdia console? Yes, I have. It's technically dubbed either the prequel or the sequel to the Apple Pippin, because Apple had Bandai distributed the Pippin in Japan. So It's weird. They have some sort of connection there. I just can't remember which came first. I think the Palladium came first. I have coffee. You guys, does anybody else have coffee? How are you guys doing out there? What should I use to get started on HD TV that's not the Framemeister? 1 second, I'll answer you after I do the super chat. Richard R just super chatted, and he said, got a Japanese Master System with a converter. What game should I get, US or Japanese? Oh, fuck, dude. I'm not good with the Master System library. The game that everyone throws out there a lot is Phantasy Star, is like the definitive game to own for the Master System. Then I would throw out the obvious ones like your Sonics, even though in my opinion the Sonics on the Master System aren't that great. But you don't really need, as far as I know, the Japanese Master System came with a converter. Why do you need the converter? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember there being any region coding in the Master System, at least going from European to North American. I don't think the Japanese one had it either, but I'm very curious to get some more information on that. But as far as we're all talking about just game recommendations, can you guys throw out some other recommendations on games? Golden Axe is pretty cool. Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. But in every instance, I just can't help but think of, like, there's a Genesis version that's better. Phantasy Star is, like, the one that I can think of that's really, like, definitive. So hopefully that helps. But people, everybody out there, if you got some good Master System recommendations, please put them in Alex Kidd in Shinobi World. That's a good suggestion. Yes, there are some games like that. That, of course, that comes from a dude named My Sega. Of course, you're going to know. Yeah, that's a really good recommendation. Games like that are good. Alex Kidd stuff, because that was really for that era. He says it's a different pin size. I thought that was like the Mark III. No? I don't remember. Lodmott Super Chat, he says, hey, I'm going to Chicago next week. Any great retro game stores that I should check out? Also, the Akura box for Dreamcast does work on 4K TVs. It worked perfectly with my new Westinghouse House 55-inch. Okay, that's interesting for two reasons. One, the reason he's even bringing up the Akura thing is that the Dreamcast, through the Akura, which is an HDMI box, outputs at 480p. And it looks fucking beautiful, but a lot of televisions that I've come to understand, modern televisions don't understand 480p through HDMI input. They'll understand it through other inputs, but not HDMI, because it's considered so archaic and bizarre that the HDMI port shouldn't even support it. He's saying that this television in particular, the Westinghouse 55-inch, which I've never heard of, unfortunately, does support that resolution through HDMI. So that's actually pretty cool. So that's awesome. Although, again, I've never even heard of that brand. As for the other part, retro game stores in Chicago, as much as I love this city, its retro gaming scene is kind of meh. The best game store in this city is People Play Games. It's up on the north side of the city. Beyond that, you start going into the suburbs. So there's a good one called Video Games Etc. It's also known as Video Games Then and Now. It's run by a guy named, I believe his name is Sean Kelly. He's actually one of the guys who created the Video Game Museum down in, I think it's Houston, Texas. So he has a game store that's pretty good. And I think it's out in Norridge, Illinois. Then the next one that I can think of is a place called Play It Retro, although I don't even know if they're still in business, but I think they're in Oak Park, Illinois. And then after that, you just have a series of chains like Disc Replay, which is just a store that sells DVDs, games, music, movies, you know, all that stuff. And they'll have a pretty decent selection of games depending on which store you go to. The best one is generally in, I think it's Prairie Side, Illinois. It's not that far south of the city. It's like southwest a little bit. That's the best Disc Replay that I can think of. Beyond that, I you know, when you sometimes you get lucky at like flea markets and that kind of stuff, but not, you know, like retro gaming stuff is not the best here. I just kind of get lucky because I end up going to a lot of different things like conventions and events and stuff. So it gives you the opportunity to kind of like go to other places and see what they got. Bar none, best part of the United States for retro gaming is the Seattle area. Outside of the US, the best part I've ever found, Southern Ontario, Canada. So hopefully you have a fun time in Chicago. Unfortunately, I won't even be here when you are here. I'll be here very briefly. I'm going to St. Louis for the weekend. I come back for like a day, and then I got, you know, probably have to work that whole fucking day, and then I'm off to San Francisco for like the week. So I hope you have fun here. Do yourself a favor. Get some deep dish pizza from Lou Malnati's. Google it. Lou Malnati's. Do not eat the fucking horse shit that they sell at the airport. I feel so bad for anybody who ever came to Chicago, like through the airport, and was just like, yeah, I want to try deep dish, but I don't have time to go into the city. I'll sell what they have in the airport. Ugh, that's fucking horseshit. They don't even sell it outside of the airport because it's that bad. They only sell the really crappy ones like Nancy's or Reggio's in the airport. Don't eat it. Anyway, sorry. We had going back to the other question, which I promised I would do. There's no favoritism here. There's just, you know, priority with super chats because they spent some money. So going back to the other question. The question was, what should I use to get SCART on an HD TV that's not the FrameMeister? So a lot of people will point out the OSSC, which I too have done a video on. The OSSC is nice. It does RGB extremely well, but it has a lot of flaws in it that people got really pissed off with me for even pointing out, which was kind of, I don't know what to tell you. Like the primary issue I had with it was that it had funky resolution outputs, which made it really difficult to capture footage. In fact, I couldn't get it to capture footage at all. And it only supported DVI out, not HDMI, which meant you have to go through a series of extra cables and all this bullshit to get it to work on most televisions. Now, I guess my review hit them a little hard because I was told that they were, like, the guy who made the thing was messaged me and was kind of mad that I gave his product not the best review. And so at some point they decided, I guess they're adding HDMI boards to it, and I guess they're updating the soundboard as well, because those were two issues I had. If the newer version is better, then that would be a great alternative, because it did RGB amazing. But beyond that, you know, I don't have any obvious recommendations, because a lot of the cheaper boxes are good. They're cheap, but they don't offer you the best image. The FrameMeister, unfortunately, is just what it is. It is the best thing that exists for that, and for the foreseeable future it will continue to be the best thing. There might be a new version of that supposedly coming into existence. Maybe that will replace it, but for the time being, FrameMeister. Benedek Music just super chatted, although he didn't leave a comment, so leave a comment, dude, and I'll be happy to answer it or read it. Thank you for all the super chats, guys. Really appreciate it. Seriously, with Adpocalypse, man, fuck Adpocalypse. We just got another PayPal donation as well that came from, I guess, Joshua Finzi. What are your thoughts on Wii U games being ported over to the Switch? Can you see it continuing, and if so, can you see it affecting the Nintendo fan base in a negative way? Yes, I 100%. Well, first of all, thank you for the donation. Yes, I can 100% see Nintendo continuing to do that. They're going to take the Wii U's greatest hits, because they're games that are already done. Games that most people, to face it, most people did not play those games. We did. We liked them. We knew about them. We have Wii U's, etc. But most of the mass market never saw or even knew those games existed. Like, I was just in Denver, and I was visiting my cousin, and he had a Wii, and his girlfriend and him just got a Switch, and they're like, oh, it's so good that there's a new Nintendo, because there hasn't been one since the Wii. They have no idea the Wii U was ever a thing. And they were like, yeah, we got there's a new Mario Kart, it's Mario Kart 8. So it's just like, they're, unfortunately, people like that are the mass market. Those are the people Nintendo's trying to sell stuff to, not us. They like our money, they like our passion, but they don't really care if we've already played their games or not. They're selling to people like that because they represent the majority. Just like with sneakers and the whole sneakerhead thing that I was talking about. We all buy shoes, but we're not all sneakerheads. Same thing with the video games. A lot of people buy video games, but they're not they're not super fans like we are. So my point of all that is, I think that what's going to keep happening is Nintendo's just going to take some of their biggest hits. They'll probably re-release Splatoon. Like, in all honesty, they'll probably do a Splatoon re-release. I'm thinking they'll probably do Smash Brothers. Like, they'll probably do that because it prints money for them, because they now have a console that's actually selling well. It's in need of games, and they have this big library of Wii U titles that are actually quite quality titles that they can just throw out there to kind of appease people, while at the same time spending their efforts on making new titles. So yes, I can see Nintendo fans being a bit burned by that, but at the same time, what else are you going to do? You don't have to buy it. It's 100% optional, but yes, I absolutely see them continuing to do that. So thank you, Joshua. Benedict, I haven't seen a comment from you yet. Oh, there it is. Okay. When you come next time to Germany and Austria, look for the Autofence for Mega Drive. Underrated platformer based on a comic sketch by a German comedian, Otto Walks. Can you send me a picture of that? Can someone find a picture of that and post it? Because I've never heard of that. The Autofence for the Mega Drive, aka, actually, I'll just Google it real fast. Let's take a look. I've never heard of that. Do I own Super Metroid yet for the Super Nintendo? I'm assuming is what you mean. If so, yes, I do. That was actually a fan donation at one point. The Autofence. Okay, so I'm looking at Google here, Google Images. Yeah, I've never seen this before. So, if I ever go back there, which hopefully I will get to, I'm sure mention it in a live stream. Hey guys, I'm going to Germany tomorrow. So somebody just remind me, hey Adam, go find the Autofence. When I was on this last trip, I really didn't get a chance to do any like retro game hunting. That really just wasn't an option, unfortunately, for the most part. But if I get the chance to do it, then yeah, hell yeah, I'd love to look for something like that. I love regional exclusives, man. I find them fascinating. Thanks a lot, Adam. Now I want Lou Malnati's. I don't blame you, dude. Everybody Google Lou Malnati's, and you will know, well, happiness, but at the same time sadness, because you won't be able to get it for the most part. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and post an image of a Lou Malnati's deep dish pizza in the thread right now for all of you to look at. There you go. Enjoy that. I'm going to take a second, drink some coffee here. Do you believe HD Shenmue will be announced at Gamescom? Probably not, because I think everything that's pertaining to Shenmue at Gamescom will be limited to Shenmue 3. I also don't think Gamescom's not typically where you make announcements. You just kind of show updates to things. I've been to a Gamescom before, by the way. It's fucking chaos out there. Yeah, so I don't think they'll announce anything, but I know Sony basically has almost no presence there, and Microsoft tries, but they're also limited in what they can actually do. And Scott the Canadian says, I took him to Lou Malnati's once and it was so fucking good. That's damn right. Scott, you need to come back to Chicago, man. Like when I have some sort of time frame, you got to come back. Maybe in like, I don't know, fucking February. You guys, I'm entering event convention season and it really doesn't slow down until like the end of January. It's fucking chaos. Just got a PayPal donation from Rob Janos, who is a new Patreon backer, by the way. So you'll start hearing his name in the Patreon podcast, which I know people hate when you mention Patreon. I know that. I know it. But I'm going to pitch this to you like this. If you are like all these very generous people who are like throwing out money for super chats or the PayPal donations, I will say Patreon might be in your best interest. Not for my sake, but for yours, because with that, I give you benefits. Like you get like immediate access to the podcast, and you generally get, with every video, you get like 2 or 3 days early access to it. So that's my suggestion. It's $5 a month. That's my suggestion, but you do whatever the hell you want to do. Anyway, I know he started back in the Patreon because he gets shout outs in the podcast. Fucking, there's Ronald. All right, Ronald, we had so many questions about modifications for you. Explain how to get PAL Super Nintendo games to work on a North American SNES. Go. Meanwhile, I'm going to read this. Rob Jano says, hey Adam, hope you enjoyed your trips to Europe and Colorado. I noticed that you talked about the Nintendo Virtual... I noticed that you've never talked about the Nintendo Virtual Boy in any of your console recap videos. Which console generation do you consider it part of, and do you consider it a portable system because of its battery pack? Thanks a lot, and I'll catch you next month at AVGC. Well, first of all, yes, I will be at AVGC. It's a convention in September in Parsippany, New Jersey. I will be a guest, so if you're anywhere in the area, come on out. So good, I'll see you there, Rob. Second, the Nintendo Virtual Boy is most certainly not a console. It is, as fucking ridiculous as it is a portable. It is a handheld. It's technically more, a portable would be a better description. So it would be considered part of that. If I did a portables or handhelds recap, which I'm sure I'll do at some point, it goes in that line. But I also don't own one, which makes it much more difficult to do a video on. So at some point, I'll have to get one and do the video on it, but fuck if I know when that'll be. But hopefully that answers your question. So thank you, Rob. Okay. All right. So good. Rob, Ronald's in there. Scott's in there. Alden's in there. Your admins are there. They're extremely dangerous people, especially Scott. So watch out. You know, Scott killed a guy, but it's okay because he's Canadian, so they just pardoned it. Yeah, Alden's going to be there. He's going to be at AVGC. So let's go with some more questions. You guys having fun? How are you guys doing? You having a good time? I got water. Can you do a Sega SG-1000 recap? I can and I will. It's just a matter of when. one was gifted to me by Levi Roach, which is what he calls himself. Very nice guy. He just donated a boxed SG-1000 to me. I did a video on it a while back, or at least I showed it in the video. And at one point, I will do that video. It's just, as I mentioned before, guys, my schedule, as you can tell, is fucking nuts. I'm always off somewhere. So the amount of time that I get to sit down and produce videos is hard. And I do my best to compress it all and get it all done as quickly as I can, as you know, while still maintaining, at least hopefully, a decent video. But that's again why it's kind of nice to do the Patreon, because then you get to see all those right away as opposed to having to wait for them to be kind of rolled out. But anyway, Colin hates me. That's cool. Blake is loving the stream. Scott killed a guy with maple syrup, apparently. That makes sense, actually. How much longer do I think the PS3 and 360 servers will be up? See, I thought they would have shut those down by now, so I'm glad they haven't. I think what I've been hearing is that the 360 servers are very much dependent on, like, the Xbox One servers and the 360 servers actually kind of run in tandem, so they probably won't be down anytime soon. And because of that, Sony probably won't shut down PS3 servers either, but I could see them doing it because they're like top dogs, so they can do dick moves and they just get away with it. They get a pass. What I'm actually more excited about is that apparently, this is what I've heard, apparently the OG Xbox games that are made backwards compatible with the Xbox One, they're going to function similar to 360 games in that it'll recognize the disc, but it won't read it. It'll just like detect it and then download an Xbox One build of the same game. And because it's doing that, it will allow it to have a whole different set of Xbox Live servers that will function with it. So that's kind of insane. So original OG Xbox games that at one time supported Xbox Live, the ones that are made compatible anyway, will once again work with Xbox Live. And the even crazier thing I heard was that if, like, one game we know is going to work is Crimson Skies. Crimson Skies will once again have online support through Xbox Live. And it will function if you have the actual OG Xbox Live set up with Crimson Skies. That's what I've been told, and I think that's insane. Awesome, but insane. So rather than shutting stuff down, it looks like more stuff's actually getting turned back on, which is kudos. That's fucking cool. Do a Wii U recap video. It's too early, man. Like, I mean, I might even still do another birthday video for it this year, because it did technically get games this year, so we'll see. Although that video would be short, but we'll see. Do you guys want to see that? Would that be interesting to you? It would be in November. Nintendo shut down Mario Kart servers. No part of me is surprised by that. Nintendo is not exactly embracing online capabilities. We just got another donation from Joshua Finzi on PayPal. It says, I've recently watched Kong Skull Island. I thought it was fairly average, and honestly, it didn't hold my attention span. I'm getting a bit burned out of all these multiverse films. Can you see a decline in interest after Infinity War? Well, unfortunately, well, first of all, thank you for the donation. Second, I did not see Kong Skull Island, but I want to, but you know, it wasn't driving me to the theater. As for the multiverse thing, the multiverse concept is not a bad idea. In fact, it's a genius idea. The problem is how logistically complicated and difficult it is to pull off, because you have to have, like, every film has to be good or at least decent for that to keep working. Because if you make one bad film, it can derail everything. Which is really what happened to the DC universe. And I'm not going to go into this for like 20 minutes like I did last time, but, you know, Man of Steel was a good start. Not a great start, but a good start. And then they tried to do some universe building with Batman v Superman, and unfortunately they did universal destruction by destroying every potential storyline they could have set up. Like, that movie is so awful to what a cinematic universe should be. They really should have just made a movie after that, undoing that movie, like X-Men Days of Future Past. But instead they're proceeding forward, which is, I mean, I guess you have no choice, but it's... Ugh. So I think the cinematic universe concept is a good idea. It's just that no one other than Disney with Marvel, and I guess technically Star Wars, has been able to do it correctly. So Disney's like the kings right now, because they have the only two successful ones going. DC's kind of in, Warner Brothers is kind of in second with the DC universe because it's the only other one that's like kind of legit. And then Sony makes these like pathetic attempts with like Ghostbusters and Spider-Man and all that shit that all fails. And oh, the Emoji Movie universe, I'm sure that'll never happen, but it would not surprise me if they thought it would. Sony is, other than Paramount, is the most incompetently run film studio that exists. And yeah, at least Paramount's Transformers universe failed. They got to the 5th one and then realized, wow, these movies are just terrible. Nobody's watching them anymore. I can't even believe we got to 5. Those movies are fucking garbage. But yeah, if that answers your question, I'm not tired of the cinematic universe concept. I just think that there's too many, like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe was built out of a passionate idea. The Star Wars Cinematic Universe wasn't really built so much as it was just kind of recognized. And then they kind of are starting to add pieces to it because they had a strong ass foundation. The problem with everyone else doing it is they're not doing it because they're passionate about it. They're doing it because they think that concept alone makes money, which is not true. You have to have a competent universe that's well constructed for that to work, and they don't get that part. Thinking a Spider-Man cinematic universe was going to work on its own is just, especially when you have to have a movie due to their situation. They had to have a movie in production every 2 years. That's way too quick to do that. Fidget spinner movie wasn't. You might be kidding, but I swear I read something that Sony was actually trying to push for a fidget spinner movie. If that's true, it's like, I can't even say I'd be surprised. But then again, I can't be that hypocritical. I do have a fidget spinner. This is from Screenwave. That's my MCN. They gave this to me for free. They gave all guests this for free at Too Many Games. I'm gonna assume like 30 people stop watching now. Can you give your opinions on PlayStation VR? Do you think it's just a fad or it will get better? I haven't used PlayStation VR all that much. I just kind of used it for a couple of videos that we had to do on my other channel, and it was fine. You know, it was just a thing you do. It wasn't. I would not buy one. I was amused by it because I hadn't paid anything to try it. But I certainly wouldn't invest in one. So that's kind of it. I don't, and I think they're already starting to pull them, aren't they? It's kind of considered dead. Like, I think that a lot of people who like VR will get VR headsets for the PS4 on clearance, and there's a nice little library of VR compatible and VR exclusive games that people will enjoy later on. But I think it was just kind of a one and done, and I think it was kind of smart that Microsoft never really went for that, in my opinion. Like, I've told this story before, man. Like, the best VR experience I ever had, I had at Machinima Studios in Los Angeles. Machinima had built this giant green screen room. They had hooked up with an HTC Vive, and they spent, like, God knows how much money setting that up. And, you know, then you had a whole room to work with. But even then, you know, I ended up punching a wall as hard as I possibly could. It's an actual video you can look up, by the way. GSP plays VR. You can see me punch a wall with a headset on. But that is the best experience I ever had with it, but it's not financially viable to do that. So whatever. Somebody said, oh, I did miss a super chat. Thank you for that. Forgotten Warrior 999. See, I had to reload the page, and when I did that, it just kind of jumped past. So I apologize. Forgotten Warrior 999 super chatted. He says, will you ever do a video on the Virtual Boy? Well, it's funny. We just got the same exact question. The short answer is yes. Basically, I don't own one, and it's not a console, so it's kind of like I have to, you know, wait until I do the handheld stuff. So I kind of have to both wait for the console to actually, or the portable, to actually exist in my possession, and at the same time I have to be, like, rolling into production on handhelds and portables. But the short answer is yes, I would like to do that. Sandy Starchild, thank you for cluing me in on the missing of the super chat. Which, speaking of which, we just got another one from Patrick Sobansky, who I know. You guys should know him too. I did a video on his N64. He did an RGB modded N64 that I did a review of a while ago. It was pretty good. It was a pretty good console. You guys should check out the video. But anyway, he says, "How are you, Adam? Any plans to visit the Tri-State Game Swap September 10th in Waterloo? We'll be there again with some modded consoles, the GameCube HDMI." Fuck, I would love to do that. In fact, you know what, dude? Message me. We'll talk about a GameCube HDMI or modded. I'm assuming you're talking about the modded GameCube with HDMI output. Let's talk. But unfortunately, no, I will not be in Waterloo for that particular event. I will be in Parsippany, New Jersey at that time for the for AVGC. But I love going up to Toronto, so I'm sure we can coordinate that. But just send me an email, dude. We'll talk. And you guys should check out his website as well. Check out the video I did on his N64, and then check out his website, because those guys do some really high quality work, especially to Canadians in that area, in the the greater Southern Ontario area. That's your guy right there. What's my favorite gaming historian episode? Also, you two should do a collaboration if possible. All right, so I know Norm. I've met him multiple times. We're on a first name basis. I can't say we're friends, but we're acquaintances. He's a good dude. I would love to do some sort of collaboration with him. Problem is, he lives in like Kansas City. I live in Chicago. I never have a reason to go to Kansas City. I don't think he ever has a reason to go to Chicago. And first of all, and so we only see each other at like conventions and events and stuff. And that's kind of a hard thing to film something on there. Plus, I don't really know what we would even do. There was a big Twitter push from people trying to connect us. They want Norm to do a video on the Apple Pippin, but as far as anybody seems to know, I'm like the only person who actually owns one. So I would totally be down for that. I could message him about it. We could try to work it out, but it's like, when do you film something like that? Because you watch his videos, obviously that dude does his research, and obviously he wants to do that in his, in his studio or at his home, wherever exactly he films that stuff. And I don't really want to mail something that rare. So like, maybe I can use miles or something like that. Maybe I can fly down to Kansas City. Maybe we can make something happen. I don't know, but I haven't really thought much about that. But fundamentally, I'm open to the idea of doing a collaboration. As for a favorite episode, I don't think Norm's ever done a bad video on his entire channel. The dude is legit. He makes really solid stuff. And I would say some of the ones that really kind of sit the best with me are the ones where he's done like Nintendo versus Universal, or the Tengen Atari story. Like one of the best things that Norm ever did for the internet was to correct the ridiculous misconception that Microsoft found the long lost ET stockpile of shit, which I'll address in just 1 second, but I'm going to address Adahat real quick. Adahat says, "Good night, people. Peace. Love your channel, Adam." Thank you, Adahat. He super chatted just to say that, which you didn't have to, dude. You could have just said it. But thank you very much. Have a good night, and thank you for the donation again, which is still sitting up there at the top of the screen, everybody. How impressive is that? All right, back to the point about, back to what I was saying about Norm. Microsoft coordinated a dig a few years ago when they had burned all credibility with the gaming industry and the gaming scene and the gaming fans, etc. SEK is Swedish kroner, by the way, because people are asking. They had burned all this stock, so they thought, we got to do something kind of neat. So what they did was, there's always been this rumor, this story about how Atari buried all these ET cartridges. And they went out where they, believed they were, and they dug them up, and they found the long lost vault. Problem is, that's not the long lost vault. The ones they buried and that Microsoft found were public knowledge. Atari put them there with public, consent, based on whatever county they were in. They knew they were doing that. It was just surplus in a warehouse. That's all that was. There is supposedly a real lot somewhere where Atari did that kind of off the record. That's the one no one's ever found. And that's what Norm was saying in his video, and he showed like all the entire history of how Microsoft kind of lied about that, to just kind of feed off the basically the misconception most people have about that story. And so I think that's one of the best things he ever did for gaming, the gaming community in general, was just kind of what I try to do, although he does it much better, which is to try and just correct misinformation. Like I make mistakes all the time. We're all human, we do. But I do my best to try and correct misinformation in gaming, and that dude does it as well, but he does it on a level that not too many people can compete with. So I highly respect Norm. And yes, obviously, if he wanted to do that video, I would find a way to make it happen. Share my FrameMeister settings. Okay, so I don't have any preset ones. I didn't do that myself. You can actually look that up. There's a whole folder you can download from like various websites that just have pre-existing configurations for various consoles to use on the FrameMeister. So if you're not aware, the FrameMeister, which is an amazing device for using your old game consoles on your modern TV, it can adjust settings based on whatever console you have connected to it so that the picture quality looks better or worse depending on what console it is, basically maximizing each console. And there's people who have made whole folders of settings for every particular console. I didn't do that. I just downloaded it, and you can download that as well and just put those on an SD card, and there you go. So I would recommend just Googling that. What do I like better, handhelds or hand jobs? It completely depends on who's giving me the hand job, man. What are my thoughts on Skies of Arcadia? I think I need to play it. It's one of those big Sega titles that is high quality, that everyone who's ever played it loved, but not a whole lot of people have ever played it. So yeah, I think I would need to get around to it. But the problem with that is, again, it's just time in my case. We just got another super chat from Shift Happens Podcast. Any chance of transferring Shenmue 2 saves to Shenmue 3? Well, first of all, thank you for the donation there. As for that, it would entirely depend on, I mean, first of all, Sega has to do re-releases of Shenmue 2 HD. They would have to do that. And then EaseNet would have to know that they're doing that, and they would have to pre-program both ends of that. You know, Sega would have to program it so that the end of Shenmue 2 still creates a save data that would be compatible with whatever is going into Shenmue 3. That's easier said than done. I'd love to see it. I hope they think to do that, but there are so many like things that have to be hit for that to work. And it may just not, it may be one of those things they just sacrifice because of budget, is my guess. Which is unfortunate, because in Shenmue 1 and 2 it was a really essential feature. Would you buy Shenmue 3 if it was digital only? I was very much on the record. All right, so there was a brief phase there where Shenmue 3 had been announced. It was digital only, but the Kickstarter happened. They said it would be digital only, and then eventually it was made physical. So there was a brief phase in there where that was the case. And what I basically told everyone was like, look, I'm going to support this for everyone else, but I'm not going to play it unless there's a physical version. And a lot of people apparently were on my same page because they were getting hammered by demands for a physical PS4 version. So, you know, before that month was even over, they had announced it. It was like 2 weeks in and they announced it. So I stand by that. Like, I would have supported to get it to exist for people who would want to play it. And I would also want it to be in existence, hoping that eventually there would have been a physical edition. But I will admit, I was surprised it only took 2 weeks before they caved and they did it. So fortunately, I don't have to actually deal with that direct dilemma. Who is this guy and how did he end up on my recommendations? Well, my name's Adam Koralik. It's in the title of the video. And I have no idea, but thanks for popping in. Do you think Apple will ever come out with the Pippin 2? No. Have I heard of the new GameCube HDMI adapter? Yes, I actually talked about it before. The short answer is I would do a review on one, but I don't have one. If YouTube is actually recommending this video to people, I'm astonished because YouTube really doesn't do me many favors. NBA offseason trade. Is LeBron James screwed? Did they actually trade Kyrie Irving? I know they picked up Derrick Rose. Although Derrick Rose, I love Derrick Rose so much. He brought us so much great entertainment in the city of Chicago for the Chicago Bulls and all that, and he was such a good talent. I feel so bad for what happened to him. And I'm not even like, you know, I know that you should be like mad. Oh, he's working with the enemy. It's like, no, he's a professional basketball player. He's going to go where he's going to go. So I wish him well. I just got a donation, a 20-cent donation. I still, like I said, the amount doesn't matter. It's whatever you guys want to do. Thank you. From an Arnie Oratel. Says, hey Adam, have you heard about the new HDMI adapter for the GameCube called Plug and Play by Zelda X Pro? Is HDMI adapter better than component cables? Metal Jesus Rocks made an entire video on the HDMI adapter, then he provides a link. So I haven't used it, so I can't say for sure. My understanding is that it essentially just taps right into what the component cable does. So it essentially would equate it. My guess is, I haven't used it, so I don't know, although I would love to. My guess is that it outputs either 480i or 480p depending on the game. 480p can be a problem on HDMI monitors because not every HDMI monitor is going to recognize it. However, it's vastly more probable than 480i. 480i through an HDMI input is really uncommon to have supported. And since the vast majority of GameCube games only use 480i, it's entirely possible that for the most part that thing doesn't really work. I don't know. Like, for example, there's a shitty, admittedly it's shitty, but there is a PS2 HDMI adapter. It's the same exact concept, except, you know, made by some junky Chinese company instead of some guy who has like a passion for engineering. There's a big difference there. But the point is, it does fundamentally the same thing. It just taps into the component signal and outputs it through an HDMI port as opposed to a component port. Component is designed to handle a wide range of smaller resolutions. HDMI is not. So as a result, I've tested this with the PS2 device on my televisions. Most of them cannot recognize the PS2 through 480i. Only one of them can because it's that resolution. With the case of the PS2, I found you know, there's not too many games that support higher resolutions on the PS2, but I found some that do, and I tested it, and then it totally works. It's just 480i doesn't. So I'm guessing the GameCube is going to be kind of the same deal, but I don't actually know until I have my hands on it. So I hope that answers your question. Just got a super chat from Christian Izwarski. Well, he didn't say anything, though, so I hope you come up with a comment. Give me something to say, because otherwise just thank you for the super chat. Interlaced versus progressive. Always progressive. Always progressive scan. Am I friends with GameSack? No, I am not. I've never had any direct interaction with them. I know they shit talked me a couple of times for some fucking reason. I've never communicated with them. It's just, I know that in a couple of videos they've done, they have spoken negatively of me, and then people sent me links to those clips, and I was like, okay. I don't try to make beef with anybody. You know, so I don't know. What's my favorite Neo Geo? I guess the AES, only because I don't own the Neo Geo CD. So that's kind of limited. I don't own an MVS either, but I mean, that's more of an arcade setup. 720p or 1080i? I would go 720p, for sure. Have you ever made any kind of emotional, sounds weird, connection to your Switch yet? I get a real Dreamcast and GameCube vibe from it. Too early for me, but I know exactly what you're talking about. It's kind of like getting nostalgia, even though the thing isn't old yet. There's just kind of this almost like warmth or comfort to it. I don't have that yet with the Switch. It's not there. I do have that with the Wii U. It's very possible the Switch will win me over with that, though. I need more time with it. Christian, have you said anything yet? Because I got your super chat, but there's still no comment attached to it. Oh, just wanted to donate, man. You are great. Always enjoy watching you. Well, thank you, Christian. I genuinely appreciate that. Do you remember the Dreamcast condolences ad? I thought it was hilarious. I don't remember that, actually. I remember Dreamcast having a lot of like ridiculous commercials, like that girl who steals the Dreamcast, and then like she's being chased down by all these people, and then a plane crashes and all this shit. Sega had some nutty ass commercials for that thing, and then of course where they all go inside the console and all the characters are interacting together. That was fucking cool, man. I miss those commercials. OSSC 1.6 or FrameMeister. I haven't used the latest firmware update with the OSSC, but that for the most part would not change my opinion of it. I talked about this earlier, but long story short, I think I would actually need an entirely new OSSC, because the biggest two issues I had with it was the lack of HDMI support and the lack of, well, frankly, audio through HDMI support as well. They might have addressed the resolution issue, but I don't know. Games it says games. What GameSack shit talk to you? I've watched every episode, and I think I would remember them punning upon you. I people have sent me clips of it. Like I've seen, I think his name's Joe, just like pictures of him at like a convention, just like shit talking me. And then I saw screen caps and conversations on like Facebook groups about how they described me as too wordy for YouTube, stuff like that. And I'm like, all right. So there you go. I really don't care, by the way. Like I said, I don't have beef with anyone. It doesn't matter to me. I do not hold a grudge. I really don't care. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. And they're not even totally wrong. I am extremely wordy, obviously. I've been sitting here doing a live show for an hour and a half, and it's nothing at this point. You guys have seen me do it for almost 6 hours before, twice. We just got a PayPal donation from Joshua Finzi again, who says, is there any way to get a German Coke to the UK? Really curious to try it after seeing your vids. Well, the funny thing is I have 2 of them in my fridge right now. So German Coca-Cola. You guys ready for this? I'm going to talk about this again. German Coca-Cola is, in my opinion, the greatest Coca-Cola on the planet. Unlike the American garbage, we have the worst Coca-Cola on the planet in the United States. But because we use like mutant chemicals and stuff. So a lot of people go, all right, cool. Why don't we go get Mexican Coke? Because Mexican Coke is good. It's like real sugar Coca-Cola, the way it's supposed to be, right? And that shit's awesome. So a lot of Americans do that. But German Coke is like the next level of that. It's basically, you have the real sugar version, but apparently their water standards are like really particular. So that gives it a different flavor. In my opinion, though, the Germans do a little too much carbonation in the Coke. So it's best to get it from a glass bottle and then let it sit and let it kind of, I wouldn't say get flat, but get a little flatter. And that'll be the best Coca-Cola you've ever had. Alternatively, go to a German McDonald's and get a Coca-Cola there. And then same thing, let it sit for just a little bit. And I promise you that's the best Coca-Cola you will ever have in your life. That would be, that would be my recommendation. Wow, you don't hold a grudge? I envy you. Dude, I've been doing YouTube for, what, 8 years? I have seen some fucked up, nasty-ass shit said to me. I don't care anymore, man. It's all... I don't care. Like, sometimes I'll rip into people because it's funny to do that. Like right here, you know, Jim says, I agree you should use less words when you talk about stuff. Kind of a dick comment, but not necessarily wrong. Do I hate him for this? Of course not. By the way, if I didn't say it, thank you to Joshua for that. Oh, I have to answer your actual question. How do you get one to the UK? That I don't know. You'd probably actually, you'd either have to find someone in Germany who's willing to ship one to you, or you'd have to actually go to Germany. Now, you're in the UK, so it's not like you're that far. I mean, I realize that's a lot of effort to get a Coca-Cola, but since, in my opinion, the best way to do it is to go to a McDonald's, that's probably why you probably should actually go rather than just rely on a bottle. If you're like, hey, someone shipped me like a plastic bottle or a can of Coca-Cola from Germany, it's not quite the same thing. So that's, I would recommend actually just going there. But I guess you could have one shipped to you, but I don't know any place that just ships German Coca-Cola. Like, you'd have to actually find someone to do it. Did I ever lose a friend over video games? No, I've done nothing but make friends because of video games. McDonald's or Burger King? I don't really eat either of them, to be honest with you. I always thought that McDonald's was tastier, but Burger King was more filling. Family Guy or South Park? South Park all day long. Although I will say the most recent season of South Park was fucking horrible. And it was weird, man. Like, I was just... So if you want to talk South Park for a little bit, like, I was just in Denver a few days ago, and obviously South Park takes place just, like, right around Denver. And so you realize a lot of the stuff that they do in South Park is very real. It's based on stuff that's actually there. My favorite one was there's an episode of South Park where they want to go to a place called Casa Bonita. It's the Disneyland of Mexican restaurants. It's supposed to be like this amazing Mexican restaurant just outside of Denver. And I thought that was just something they made up. And then I Googled it. It's totally a real place. And if I had more time, I totally would have gone to that. That would have been awesome. So next time, if I ever get to go back to Denver anytime soon, then I'm totally going to Casa Bonita. Would I ever consider making WonderSwan videos? Seems like an interesting console. I have one. I have a WonderSwan Color, but it's sealed. My buddy Chip, who people from the podcast, who you guys know, he occasionally comes in on the live shows, although I don't know if he'll be here tonight. He gave one to me. He had a bunch of handhelds and he was just purging it, but it's sealed. It's like the Korean Digimon edition. Korean specifically. That's not a generic term. It literally is Korean. And it's sealed, and I was like, well, I don't know if I'm ever going to open this or use it. So first of all, I felt bad taking it, but he was like, just dude, take it. I'm just going to get rid of it. I don't want it. So I have it. But I don't know if I'll ever open it because it's like, it's super valuable the way it is. And I know that if I open it, I'll never really use it because I don't have any games for it, except for those Digimon ones, which are all like games I couldn't play anyway. So if I get to go back to Japan and I find like a cheap WonderSwan, maybe I'll pick that up and then I'll do it. Do I ever fly out of Midway Airport? Once in my entire life. Chicago has two primary airports, O'Hare International Airport and Midway International Airport. Midway is the shitty one. Midway is the one where like only Southwest Airlines flies from and a couple other airlines. I never have a reason to go there because I don't fly on Southwest. Probably because I fly out of O'Hare and they don't operate there. So yeah, no, I've been there once in my life and I was like 10 years old. UK Coke is horrible is a comment. I remember Coca-Cola in the UK not making any kind of impression on me. And this last trip around Europe, I discovered that Poland had lime Coca-Cola in the bottle and it was really like stupid good. And then I was searching other countries. I was hoping Germany would have it because I figured it would be better. Germany doesn't have lime Coca-Cola. At least they didn't last month when I was there. Austria has it, but in the can only, and it's not as good as the bottle. And then you'll find that like some countries like the Eastern Bloc, like Poland, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, they all still have Pepsi Twist, which was Pepsi with lemon in it. So it's kind of like, who decided these weird ass things? But that's one of those interesting things about when you're traveling is you find out all this weird stuff. So, hey, Pepsi Twist was okay. Lime Coca-Cola, though, was fucking amazing. I do remember that, though, I had cherry Coca-Cola that was real sugar. That was really good. A lemon Coca-Cola I had in Japan was really good. Vanilla Coke in Austria was really good. Yeah, so there's a lot of weird varieties there, especially because here we're used to all the multiple flavors of Coca-Cola and Pepsi and stuff, but we have like the mutant chemical stuff, not the real sugar. And even though you can get real sugar like Mexican Coke, which is Coca-Cola, you can't get the real sugar versions of the flavored Coca-Colas, with like fruit flavors and stuff. So trying that over in other countries is awesome. Although I have to admit, I do kind of agree with that comment. British Coca-Cola was not very good. And the worst Coca-Cola I had in Europe was in France. It was just the bottled one. It wasn't bad. It was just like, meh. You know, it wasn't even as good as the Mexicoke. And that obviously had something to do with the fact that something about the water, because that's all I can think of that would be any different. Do I have a Dream Pie? No, I do not. I really don't care about the hardware replication, to be honest with you. Ginger Pepsi. Ah, God, I did try that. There's two versions of that I'm aware of. There is a Canadian plastic bottle one. Scott can attest to this because he and I were in the car. We tried it together. I had like 3 sips of it and I threw it away. It was fucking gross. And then there's a small can from that like 1896 line that Pepsi does in the States. That's the ginger one. That was good. I wouldn't do it again, but I was able to finish it and be like, okay, that was fine. So those are the only two I've had. I have not seen ginger Coca-Cola or ginger Coke or ginger Pepsi or anything in any other country, though. A lot of people are saying I'm ignoring them. I'm not ignoring anybody, dude. It's just as I'm very talky for YouTube, so when I get a question, I just kind of go, and then comments go. I would go get it for you, but it's I'd have to leave the shot. When I was in Austria, I found this drink called it's a coffee flavored cola, which sounds horrific. And I've tried coffee flavored colas, and they're usually fucking gross. But there's a really good one that I've only ever found in Austria, and weird as it sounds, just this one store. I stayed in the same area of Austria twice, and both times this one store in the exact same spot in the store is the only place that sold it. It's called like pure caffeine, which of course to a native English speaker sounds like pure cocaine. I'm sure that's the point. But it's really good. I have 2 cans of it in my fridge right now. If you guys are willing to let me just run off for a second, I will go get it and I will show it to you. But that's if you're willing to just kind of have some dead air for a second. It's up to you guys. In the meantime, what's the best way to use S-Video without a FrameMeister? That's kind of open-ended because I'm sure a lot of people would argue if you have a CRT that has S-Video, that's probably the best way to go. If you do not, then, well, I wouldn't recommend going direct if your HD TV has S-Video inputs. It's probably not the best way to go. Probably something like one of those cheap scalers, but like that's not really going to be good. You're not going to be happy with that. As far as from what I recall, the OSSC doesn't support it, and a lot of those like SCART to HDMI adapters don't support it. You would have to, I guess, get some sort of S-Video to SCART lead, which I'm sure the British in particular are pretty used to. But then maybe you could fit it into one of those SCART adapters, but that's really not something I would recommend. Do I ever go to the bathroom? I do. I went right before the show. I'll go after the show. I don't like to do it during the show because I consider that unprofessional. That's why I'm asking you for permission, if it's okay with you guys, if I go off and get it. A lot of you are saying go do it. So, all right, give me like a couple of seconds. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I have come bearing things that I will show you. Just let me get situated here. Okay, now, first up, I'm going to show you the thing I was talking about, which is this. It's pure caffeine. You see that? Pure caffeine. It says cola coffee taste. It's in German. Obviously, I can't read that. I'm sorry that the camera sucks, I know. But you guys probably can read that. Some of you who are out there in Austria, Germany, or just understand German. But it's really good. I really quite enjoy this. I have a couple other things I'll show you, but we just got a super chat, so let me take care of that. Lodmott, thank you again for super chatting. He says, hey, random question. Not saying whether I'm for or against Trump. Oh, dude, why are we going political? But what do you think is more likely? For Trump to get impeached or for Sega to make a new console? Both are super unlikely, though. Sega is most certainly not making another console. That much I'm sure of. I really don't want to get political here, and I'm not going to. But I will say it is, purely from a legal standpoint, it is very possible that Trump will get impeached. If he goes through impeachment trials, he will be the 3rd president to ever do so. Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton both went through impeachment trials. Neither was successfully impeached. That means they are kicked out of office. That does not happen. That has not happened. The odds of actual impeachment are really, really slim. They might put him through impeachment trials just for the sake of doing it, to make it look like, hey, we had nothing to do with this guy. We tried to get rid of him, which was kind of what Republicans did to Bill Clinton in the 90s. It's possible the same logic will go, but to actually successfully boot him out of office, only Richard Nixon could have been really booted out of office. And that's why he resigned. So yeah, that's what I'll say to that. I don't think either is particularly likely to happen. But thank you for these super chat. No, that's why I was saying, like, I'll answer your questions, but can we just avoid political stuff in general? That doesn't, nobody's happy about that. Anyway, moving on. What I was going to show you guys, other than that drink, is I have a couple random items. This is a glass bottle German Coca-Cola. Now, of course, it looks exactly the same, but of course it says in the back, it's all in German there, and you probably can't read it because it's really out of focus. But what's significant about it is, of course, it says that it was produced in Berlin specifically, so it's using German water. So I know that's legit. I also have, I have this, which is some weird Darth Vader space punch. This was actually fucking gross. I got this as a gift for somebody, mostly a gag gift, but yeah. I thought it was just neat. And I also have a lime Coca-Cola from, this is from Austria. I would have bought more in Poland, but I had no idea that I wasn't going to be able to find bottled ones outside of Poland. So otherwise I would have done that. Come to Texas, Adam will give you stuff. I was in Texas last year. I was there in October. I was in Austin and in Dallas. No joke, I might be in Dallas later this month. I quasi was invited to something, and I don't know how sure they are that it's actually going to happen. But if I do, you guys will know. I'll announce it. If it happens, it would be in like, let me check the calendar real quick. It would be in like 2 weeks from today. But I have no idea yet if it's going to happen. That's kind of how these things go with me, is suddenly someone's like, hey, come to a thing. All right, you're at the thing. Okay, bye. Like, shit just pops up. So it's possible I'll be in Dallas in 2 weeks. Okay. GameCube was Dreamcast 2. I would argue the OG Xbox was Dreamcast 2. See, other people are now debating that in the comments. Scott says, is that my glorious German Coke? It looks glorious. Oh, no, is that my German Coke? It looks glorious. This is my German Coke, motherfucker. I did get, everyone, for the record, I want to explain that I did get Scott a German Coke. It's in the fridge. This one's mine. Although I guess you could have that one. I don't really care what you get. There's two of them. I did get him one, but only because I had accidentally totally screwed him over and I felt like I owed him. When was it, Scott? Like half a year ago, something like that. Scott and I were going to do a live stream together. He was going to call in and be on Skype, and we would do exactly what I'm doing right now, but he would be on the show. And he was like, all right, you're 100% sure we're doing this? And I was like, I'm 100% sure we're doing this. He's like, okay, because I had other plans. I'm going to cancel them unless, you know, if this isn't happening. I was like, no, this is 100% happening. It's definitely happening. And I said, I'm so sure it's happening. I'm going to go out right now, and I'm going to go get a haircut and look all clean and nice for the show. And he's like, all right, man. And so I go out and I go get a haircut, and I get a beard trim with my haircut. And I'm supposed to, just for the record, I just did that yesterday. For those stalkers out there, I get a number 2 trim on my beard. That's my preferred length when I want to be groomed. Unfortunately, the woman doing it gave me a number 1, which was way too short. And so I essentially had no beard. And I came back and I was like, I have to cancel the show. Like, I can't do a stream with no beard. Like, can you even, I mean, you think of all of you watching right now, can you even imagine that? Like, just sitting there, if I just randomly came on here with no beard, you'd be really confused. And every fucking question would have been like, where's the beard? And it doesn't matter how many times I answer it, people would keep asking it. So it would be like, I can't do this show. And so I had to tell him, like, I'm sorry I totally fucked you over here, man, but I have to cancel the show. I have to sit in my place now for a week and just let my beard grow back, which it does because it grows back really stupid quick. But I was like, I owe you. I'm sorry. And so my way of compensating him, even though I do so many fucking things for Scott, man, I get him games from all over the world and he does nothing. But I got him a German Coca-Cola as a I'm sorry, and I will bring this to you next time I see you. You will have an authentic German Coca-Cola. There you go. Have I tried currywurst when I had been in Europe? I did. I had some at, I know this isn't like the best place ever. I was in the Berlin Mall, and there was like a German-themed like fast food chain in there. I realized that's not what you would consider something authentic. I mean, yes, it's in Germany, but still it's like, yeah. But that's what I had, and it was really good. I actually rather enjoyed it. Just got a PayPal donation from a Eugenio Peresi. Hey, Adam, do you have any plans to do one of these streams in more European-friendly times? It's always late here, and most of the time I can't participate as long as I would want to. Okay, so first of all, thank you for the donation. Second of all, okay, I am very aware of that problem. Obviously, because I go over there all the time. I tried like hell to do a stream in Europe on multiple occasions. I wanted to do one when I was in Poland. It didn't quite work out. The hotel internet wasn't really up to snuff. And then I never had the chance when I was in the Czech Republic. I never had the chance when I was in Hungary. So then that really just left Germany or Austria. Germany has like really strange rules about streaming. So it was told to me repeatedly, don't try to stream from Germany because your stream will get buried. And I was like, okay, fine. I'll do it in Austria. And as Ronald knows, because he was going to be there on that stream, that got fucked over twice. I was going to do it once at my hotel, but the hotel connection wasn't capable of doing a stream. Even a low grade, just video 720p, even 480p stream that would have been consistent, it was unable to do that. So then I was like, I'll do it in Ronald's house. And our plan was that we were going to go there and we were going to, he had a bunch of like console stuff he was working on, because that's what the dude does. He does a lot of console mods and repairs, and he does all these like fucking badass things. We were going to have this stuff done, and we're going to show some of it on the stream and all that. But we ran into massive problems finishing up some of those projects, and it was like we have one choice or the other. So we ended up working on the projects instead and had to cancel the stream, which bummed both of us out, but it is what it is. So I wanted to do one for Europeans, and it got fucked over. As for could I start them in North America earlier? Yes. The problem is that I look at my own analytics, and over 60% of my audience is in the United States, and like an additional 8% is in Canada. Really, Europe makes up maybe 15% of the audience. So if I do a European friendly stream, rather than 228 people watching right now, you might have like 30 people watching. And it's just, I gotta, gotta go where the numbers are. That said, I'd love to, but I'd love to do it when I'm actually there with you guys, as opposed to what looks like a strange stream from my perspective. Does that make sense? So there you go. Thank you very much for the donation. Worst thing to happen in a foreign country. Do you mean to me? Or just like the concept of, I mean, like World War II was pretty bad. Man, I'm thirsty. I got all these cold drinks in front of me, but I can't drink them. They're usually gifts for other people. I do have coffee, and I do have water, though. Yeah, so here's a perfect example of why Scott's a dick. Scott the Canadian is a dick. If you guys see him in the comments, call him a dick. Scott the dick. So he really likes Ghostbusters a lot, right? And so Ronald, who was awesome, went around and tracked down like all these European exclusive Ghostbusters games for him. And then he was like, he gave them to me, and he's like, all right, bring these to Scott. So then I become Scott's like fucking game mule who just brings stuff across. And he's like, no, that's not good enough. Bring me a German Coke, asshole. It's like, goddamn, Scott, for a Canadian, you're a dick. Just kidding. I mean, the story's true. He is a dick. What's the best way to use S-Video on a 3DO without a FrameMeister? It's the same thing, man. Like, you'd have, like I said before, you have to have some other adapter, but like none of them are really that great. Joshua Finzi just donated on PayPal again, and he donated $50, so kudos. Thank you. Hi Adam, cheers for all the info and on your opinions tonight. I'm moving houses. I assume you mean houses. I'm moving house tomorrow, so need to sleep now. One last question. Can you see an increase of 3D indie games coming out in the future? PlayStation, Saturn, 64 quality. I don't see that many, just mostly 2D games. Good night. Well, good night. Thank you for the donation. Thank you for all the donations. You've been very generous tonight. 3D indie games. I assume you mean for the Dreamcast specifically? Because like PC indie games is like a whole different medium I don't really have much to do with. But the short answer to that is basically that indie games come from the reason they're 2D is just budget, man. Like, like indie I love all the people making fun of Scott. I'm sorry, Scott. I didn't mean to really do that to you. There's people showing Scott and then pictures of dicks. That's pretty funny. But anyway, yeah, so 2D games are cheaper to produce. That's pretty much all it boils down to. And if you can get a cheaper game produced that is successful, then you obviously increase your profit margin. So games like, Well, there are exceptions to things like Shovel Knight. You know, Shovel Knight was a great example of a really good game that did well and looked cheap, but not cheap. You know what I'm saying? Um, to take a risk on 3D games means infinitely increasing your budget. And frankly, most indie games fail. Most games in general fail. And so it's just kind of like hedging your bets, I guess, to a certain extent. So I would love to see that. But I think unless it gets really cheap to produce 3D quality games, you probably aren't going to see a whole lot of them anytime soon through the indie scene. And if we're talking about the Dreamcast specifically, the closest thing we had to that was Xenocider, was a Kickstarter attempt to get a 3D Dreamcast game made, and it failed miserably. Like, there's not enough demand for that. And what they wanted was like $100,000. That's not even a lot. Like, for all things considered, like considering how much games cost, $100,000 is not much, and people weren't willing to support it. So you see why they do 2D, because it's just so much fucking cheaper. Is there any way to clean up the shitty image on the N64? Yes, you can RGB mod it. That will make it better. I've done videos on that. In fact, Patrick, who was in here earlier, I don't know if he's still watching, his company makes RGB modded N64s. I highly recommend checking it out. I've done videos on it. But there are HDMI mods coming, but they've been slow to roll out because of the guy, I guess, who makes them takes his time making, which is fine. You know, you want a quality product. But for now, anyway, the RGB mod is the way to go. Through a FrameMeister, it looks good. It doesn't blow you away. The N64 through RGB, running through a FrameMeister, it looks good. It just isn't like holy shit like some of the other consoles are. Like, RGB can really wake up a console. It's just not that. It's not the case with the N64. But if what you're doing is like connecting it with a composite cable to an HD TV, yeah, that's gonna look really bad. Did I watch the Bears preseason game? Fuck no. I don't care about the NFL like at all. Like, I give less. Like, they could win the Super Bowl and I wouldn't watch that shit. Like, the closest thing I ever gave to a fuck of the Bears was they were in the Super Bowl like 11 years ago, like 2006, and I logged into ESPN's web, or I didn't even log in, I just went to ESPN.com and just checked like once to see if they were winning, and they weren't, and I was like, okay, whatever. I figured Facebook would probably tell me if they actually won. And of course it was like, whoa, the Bears suck. And I was like, okay, I guess they lost. Like, that was it. Like, I do not give a shit about the fucking Bears. There's no reason to. Aren't they like the worst team in the NFL? What's the easiest console to mod? It depends on what your definition of a mod is. And plus, you got some really high-quality modders in the chat. Ronald would be the most qualified to answer that question. Berenstein or Berenstain? Okay, so I'm of the same conspiracy. I always remember it as Berenstein, but you're right. I've checked. It's Berenstain. I don't know how the fuck an entire generation remembers it different than it actually is. It's so weird. Like, I never fell for that whole, like, Shazam one, you know, where everybody thought, what's his face, Sinbad played a genie. It's like, no, that was Kazam. That was Shaquille O'Neal. That one I was never confused about. But the Berenstein versus Berenstain shit, that fucking conspiracy is real, man. Please do a video on installing Ultra HDMI. Well, first of all, I don't have one. Second, I would lack the skill. But if I were to have a unit that had the HDMI capabilities, hell yes, I'd do a video on it. But installing it, that's not my thing. Any chance of an SG-1000 video? As mentioned earlier in the stream, I don't blame you if you weren't here for that. Yes, I will do that at some point. Please see My Life in Gaming's channel for the best picture quality on video games. Yes, my buddies, they're my buddies. I hang out with them at conventions. I think they were supposed to go to the Missouri Game Con, but I don't think they're actually going to be there now. Yes, those dudes know what they're doing, and they make high quality videos. Highly recommended. Would you talk about the Dreamcast motherboard with a hard drive and HDMI? Well, what exactly do you mean? Like, you can mod it for both, but you don't need to do the HDMI mod anymore because you can just use the Akura box, which sweet. You just plug and play and you've got an HDMI output on it, which is nice. Because the mod is not going to do you any favors other than just It'll look nice. But a hard drive, people do a lot of external hard drives for that, but you can do that through like CF cards or SD cards, and you have to use Dreamshell. The biggest hindrance to that whole thing is Dreamshell itself. Dreamshell has compatibility issues, let's put it that way. What I'm actually excited about as far as Dreamcast mods go is there's guys making new internal power supplies for the Dreamcast. If you've ever looked inside a Dreamcast, it's a very compact, very precise design, and the power supply takes up a lot of real estate in there, and it also gets hot. But there's new power supplies being made now that are really tiny, and they leave a lot of extra space in the Dreamcast for modding purposes, as well as keeping it a lot cooler. So pretty nice. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of that. Bob says that Corey and Try will both be at Missouri GameCon, so I take it back. They will be at the Missouri GameCon, which again I'm going to tomorrow. As always, I fly out right before a stream or right after a stream. So yeah, if you're anywhere near the St. Louis area, you want to meet them, you want to meet me, you want to see the Super Nintendo or the PlayStation Nintendo prototype, the Nintendo PlayStation prototype, all that shit's going to be there in addition to being able to like buy games and just, you know, hang out with us and stuff. I went last year. It was a lot of fun. Highly recommend. They're doing it 2 days this year, so it's pretty cool. I'm definitely looking forward to doing that again. I'm looking forward again to play the Nintendo PlayStation. My buddy Terry Diebold owns that thing, and it's like, dude, that's fucking awesome, man. You got like this ridiculous rare piece of gaming history. That's insane. I've held it before too, but this time I'm gonna play it. Can you do a video on your favorite old game console commercials? That's kind of difficult because then you have to actually like recruit all of that footage. You have to actually find all of these commercials, and then you have to actually have like a nice critical analytical opinion of each. And I think that would come off as boring because it would be really long, and it would just be, I'd play the whole trailer, and then it would be like, well, you know, I guess it was kind of funny when they did that. And it's like, I don't think you really want to see that. I think that's an idea that's nice, but when you actually were to get it, you'd be like, what the fuck is this? We just got a super chat from Lee Geezy. Thank you. Says, hi, Adam. Lee from Derby. I remember you. Have you seen the Kickstarter by Retro Fighters for the N64 pad? I ordered mine. What do you think? All the best, pal. Yes, I've seen it. We talked a little bit about it earlier. I don't know a whole lot about it. I know that it's basically it's a Kickstarter attempt to have a new controller produced for the N64 that rather than using the Trident-like style, it uses a more modern style of controller like Xbox 360 or PS2, PS3, PS4 interface, so that it's more for the modern gamer's hands. I like the idea. I have not backed it. I would definitely be interested in checking one out, though. So if you guys are out there and you want to look at the thing, Google it. It's exactly what he said about the N64 pad. Check it out. It's pretty neat looking, and I would just be curious to see how that project goes and becomes completed. Bob says I'm in luck. Jake isn't driving this year. Jake picked me up from the airport last year, and we had this like at the Missouri GameCon, and I was like waiting around for him for like an hour because he couldn't find where I was, and it was just a miscommunication about which floor to be on. It was pretty funny. It was my fault, but we all just blame Jake because why not? Nintendo PlayStation, the holy grail of gaming. Yes, that one. Do you guys know the story behind the Nintendo PlayStation? Is that what you're asking, Denzel? Cleaning and restoring a Nintendo PlayStation prototype. I would never. That's Ben Heck is the one who's dissected that thing a bunch of times. That guy's legit. Let him do it. Like I actually asked Terry once, like, are you willing to retro bright it? Because the console has yellowed, and he didn't want to do that. So they cleaned it up. They got it working, but he doesn't want to do the retro brighting. I'm not 100% sure why, but it's his choice. It's his property. He made a case that it's like it's more about the history of it, like you see it aged. I could see that, but I don't know, not up to me. Plus, I wouldn't be the one to retro bright it anyway. Like I really do not want to be responsible for anything that happens with that device. I think what we would have seen if the DC had been successful is add-on support for DVD functionality and incremental upgrades similar to what Microsoft and Sony are doing now. I don't think you would have seen incremental upgrades as far as games are concerned. The DVD add-on we know was a thing. Like it was in, like, there are prototype images of it. It would have been an add-on that would have gone onto the bottom and somehow fed into the Dreamcast. I'm not entirely certain how. I probably threw the broadband expansion port to communicate with it, and you would have had a DVD functionality. But beyond that, like, I don't think that would have been enough. Like, add-ons are not really going to push people because they have to buy too much crap. Sony did it right with the DVD functionality. Like, they gave it to you right out of the box, and they were smart from a financial standpoint of marketing it as more of a DVD player than a game console. It was not the best move for gaming, but at the same time, it was the best move for them from a financial standpoint. And credit where credit's due, they sold 155 million of those things. The Atari 2700. Yes, if you guys aren't aware, so there was a recently we had a prototype of the Atari 2700 found, not 2600, 2700. A guy in somewhere in, I think it was Oceanside, California, was just in like a Goodwill, and he found this rare ass prototype of a console Atari never released. It was an Atari 2600, but they had created like a different look for it, and it used wireless controllers that apparently had like 1,000-foot range on them. And the reason they never released it is they couldn't get the controllers to be like locked to the console. So what that meant was if anybody within 1,000 feet of you had the same console, that the games would have, like, you know, the controllers would have misfired with each other, and it wouldn't really work. They couldn't get quality control out of it. So they just scrapped the idea. And so all the prototypes, you know, who knows where most of them went. But this dude found one just sitting in a Goodwill somewhere. So he bought it for like $30, and then he sold it for $3,000. Personally, I think he could have got way more than $3,000 for that. I mean, $3,000, well, yes, that is a nice chunk of money. That's not that much for something that insanely rare. But hey, if he's not really a video game person, then that was just $3,000 in his pocket. What's the most impressive modded OG Xbox you've found? So that's kind of an interesting question, isn't it, Ronald? So my buddy Ronald, who has been in and out of here on the chat, he might still be listening. I'm going to let him answer that one, because he has done some insane mods to the OG Xbox. And he knows way the hell more about it than I do. And the way he describes the ultimate Xbox, it's like almost a next generation platform. It's insane. Lee says, hey Adam, your thoughts on HDMI modded GameCube instead of buying its very rare and expensive component cable? Like, I'd like to know what you think. So there's two versions of this that are happening now with HDMI mods for the GameCube. There was, and I guess it still is, because the component cables for that thing are like stupid expensive, people don't want to pay for them, understandably. So people were making like these little HDMI boards that you would solder into the actual console, and it would tap into that digital output, and it would actually look better than the component output, even at its best. And so the picture quality was coming off of that was great. The problem was the boards are very uncommon because the guy who makes them in very small numbers. And people are starting to get fed up with that. So another guy, I think it's another guy, started saying, all right, fuck it. Instead of doing mods where we have to get a board internally, what I'm going to do is make this little device that you attach to the component port that already exists, and it'll just be essentially a component to HDMI adapter, essentially is what it is. I have not used either of them. My understanding is the soldered in board has a better image quality, which would make sense because it's tapping directly into the console, whereas the other one is just kind of passing a signal through. I'm a little concerned about both of them for reasons previously stated in this video, which is that they probably, for the most part, output either 480i or 480p, and a lot of modern televisions have problems understanding those resolutions through HDMI input. Since I don't own either, I can't say for sure, but my guess is they'll have problems, especially 480i. Benedict Music just super chatted again. He says, I am writing something important down below. And true to his word, he did. As you mentioned in your last playload, many games in Germany have been censored. There is a website, ogdb.eu, where you can look up what version of a game is censored and which one is not. I did not know that website exists, but I guess that makes perfect sense. It is the internet. So yeah, Germany has a lot of like laws about censorship in games. Like a lot of stuff can't be shown, or stuff like that. So there's a lot of weird mutant versions of games out there. Like infamously, things like Contra, they had to replace all the bad guys with robots and stuff like that. It's not as, apparently now in like 2017, it's nowhere near as bad as it was. You'll notice if you go to Germany, you'll see some games like Rise of the Tomb Raider just have this little logo in the front that says 100% uncut, which essentially means like, yes, this game has material in it that Germany typically doesn't allow, but this copy of it has that, material in it. Whereas in other countries, you really, well, it depends on the country, of course, but in other countries, you don't have to worry about that. Like in the United States, you'll never see that because we don't do that. Austria is where a lot of games with German language are purchased because they don't have that law, but they still have German content. So a lot of Germans will import their stuff from Austria. But because of that law, sometimes the German versions of games will bleed into other countries. And if you're a retro collector, you kind of have to pay attention to that because you could end up with, like, frankly, shittier versions of games that you didn't intend. Ronald says the Max OG Xbox mod, RAM upgrade to double the RAM and replace the BGA socketed CPU to a 1.4 gigahertz P3 CPU, as well as an SSHD or SSD hard drive, which one point to add to that, you can have up to 2 terabytes of hard drive storage. So in theory, you can double the mod, essentially double the CPU capabilities, and add a 2 terabyte SSD to that thing if you really want to. And that would be impressive. In addition to all the normal modifications of like making it region free, allowing it to play pirated content and emulators, all that stuff. The speed performance, you can also upgrade the actual DVD-ROM drive to one that reads content substantially faster than the stock ones do. Why are Nintendo, I assume you mean GameCube, component cables so rare? Nintendo just didn't produce a lot of them. They sold them over the counter, if you will, in stores in Japan for a very limited time. In North America, they only sold them through their website, and in Europe, they never even released them. And Europe got so fucked on the GameCube, it's ridiculous. But it's mostly because you have to remember at the time they came out, component was not the standard. In fact, component never became the standard. It was really only popular for like a year and a half. And Nintendo was not doing well with the GameCube, so they looked at it and went, okay, how do we make it cheaper? Well, one of the things they did was they cut out the component port because it would make the console cheaper to produce. So then once they did that, there was really no reason to keep making the cables that they found a lot of people weren't even using because they didn't have TVs at the time that were even capable of using it. Hence, the cable is rare. Whereas the PlayStation 2 and the OG Xbox never got rid of... They used the same port either way, so they had no reason to get rid of it. And they were also kind of pushing, next generation in the truest of ways. And they produced the hell out of those cables. They also, Nintendo put some sort of chip in it where really no one could figure out how to replicate that chip until like this year. So yeah, that's basically why. I imagine those cables will come down in value if the HDMI device is proved successful. But, again, I'm really curious. Sorry about hitting the mic. I'm very curious to see how that thing works with modern televisions. It's because of the resolution issue. I could see a situation where it's like that thing is nice because it's convenient, because it has HDMI, all that stuff, but where it doesn't work on most monitors, it's borderline useless. But I don't know that to be true because I don't own one. It's just, it seems like that has to be the way it works. Is Gotcha Force really worth $250? That's obviously up to the person who buys it. I don't own a copy of Gotcha Force, and I personally would not pay $250 for it. The only condition in which I would pay $250 for Gotcha Force is if I was going for a full set of GameCube games, and that was the only game I was missing, and I was just like, fuck, and I have to do it. But that ain't the case. Sorry, did the stream stop? I'm going to refresh. Suddenly the chat window just ceased. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, sorry. It just, the chat window just like totally stalled. And I was like, oh, maybe it just failed. Component is underrated. I mostly play fighting games, and and analog is noticeably smoother. You might have a point there, but I fucking hate. I just hate component cables because of how inconvenient they are to try to use. Not only because they have like 5 cables, whatever, but like it's just annoying to try and find a device. Like they never made good adapters for it. They never made good switch boxes for it. They never made good like component to HDMI devices. It's just kind of an inconvenience at all times to try and use, because like even the FrameMeister, when you give it component input, doesn't handle it that well. It can with enough like profile updates and stuff, but it's like it's just a pain in the ass. So I do my best to get away from components. So the idea that a component, or I'm sorry, an HDMI modded GameCube could solve that problem for me, great. I want that. Ronald, listen up. You need to, I mean, we need to, but I'm going to say you, because really it would be your problem because I can't do this. We need to find a way to get HDMI boards into an OG Xbox. Do it, man. Make it happen. Make yourself a few $1 million doing that. That'd be great. You'd never make $1 million, but God, that'd be cool, wouldn't it? HDMI output on an OG Xbox. Native. Am I getting Sonic Mania? No, because I want a physical edition. I don't want these bullshit collector's editions that have a digital code. I would much rather get a regular ass edition that was physical. Somebody sent me a link that like GameStop of the UK is going to have physical standalone editions for the Switch, although I have no idea if that's actually true. If that's the case, yeah, hell yeah, I'd like import it, but beyond that, I don't know. How many consoles do you own total? Dude, I have no idea, because I have so many repeats. Is UK GameCube that bad? What exactly do you mean by that? The problem with the GameCube in Europe, not just the UK, is that Nintendo, they gave you RGB capabilities, which is nice. The North American and Japanese versions don't have that. But the problem is they intentionally went out of their way to strip out progressive scan from all the PAL versions of games. So, for example, my favorite game on the GameCube is Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes. Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes supports the high resolution mode, so you can play it in progressive scan 480p, the North American version or the Japanese version if you have the component cables. But on the European version, they intentionally took that line of code out of there, so you can't. Even if you have the component cables, you still can't. And I don't know why the hell they went out of their way to do that. That said, the advantage you have is that RGB out of that thing actually looks pretty good, and all games support it, but the North American console doesn't have it. So basically, in North America, if you don't have the component cables, then your next best option is S-Video. And S-Video does not look as good as RGB. So you get like the majority of games, basically the PAL stuff is really consistent with RGB. It always is going to look the same. In North America, you either have the progressive scan cables, which are much better, or you have the S-Video cables, which are like down here. Or in Europe, you have right in the middle. That makes sense? If the component cables were not as expensive and fucking hard to get as they are, North America would just hands down have won that particular little standoff. But because they didn't, it's kind of this, you can debate who actually won that shit. Scott the Canadian's going to bed. Good night. I'm gonna drink both of your Cokes. I decided I'm not gonna give them to you. Have a good night. My favorite PAL Dreamcast game, Shenmue 2. Easy answer. If that doesn't count, then Rez. This statement is demonstrably false. David says, Wii is the best way to play GameCube games because the component cables are cheap. That is fucking horseshit. Yes, the cables are cheap. The problem is that statement is not accurate. The GameCube does a better job of outputting video quality through component than the Wii does. It's definitively proven. Like, go look it up if you feel like it. Google image search, Google video searches of it. The image quality off of the Wii is substantially, well, not substantially, but it is worse than the GameCube. So that is most certainly not the recommended way to play GameCube games. And now that you have the HDMI boards, that is going to be the way, most likely. Ronald says I'm giving him ideas. Good. Do some HDMI mods. We just got another super chat from Lodmont. Hey there. Sorry about being political. The political question earlier. No, it's all good, dude. But anyway, why do you think Sega uses AT-Games for their mini Genesis consoles? I would think by now they'd have switched to someone else. Simple, because it's a decision they don't have to keep making. You know, like they just give a license to this shitty ass company and they get a check. They don't have to do anything. Sega is the path of least resistance when it comes to stuff like this. They do not want to get their heads, you know, they don't want to get involved in anything. So, especially Sega of North America. Sega of America sucks. But, yeah, so I'm sure that's why they go with AT-Games, because AT-Games is willing to do the job as cheaply and quickly as possible. If you guys aren't aware, AT-Games is this, like, I believe they're Chinese, right? They're like this shitty-ass company that makes Genesis clones. And they've never, ever perfected it. And they've been doing it for, like, 15 years. The problem is, a lot of the time, the games will run the correct speed, but the audio is almost intolerable. But people keep buying them because they keep getting tricked into it. And they never feel the need to fix it, like ever. AT-Games just makes garbage. But Sega of America especially doesn't care about quality control. It's just, for them, it's a quick check, and then they move on. So I would love to see Sega do it properly, but that shit ain't going to happen. Maybe in Japan, maybe in Europe, because Sega of Europe is the most friendly. Like, they will answer your questions. They will talk to you. But they have the least amount of power of the three. Sega of Japan makes all the decisions, and they're starting to right the ship and do some cool stuff, but they're not very communicative. And Sega of America just does nothing. Nothing. Thank you for the super chat. If you want to, what he just did again is super chat. That's a dollar symbol below. Donate any amount of money if you want to, and I'll answer your question immediately. It's completely up to you. Alternatively, you can use PayPal. That's in the description. All the information on that. Completely voluntary. You do not have to do it, but I do appreciate it. You help the channel continue. So thank you. Is anyone working on a substitute DC link cable? I think someone was working on that for a while, but I don't know if anything ever came of that. So I'm not sure. I have the official one, and I have the Dragoncast one. The thing is, it's not that useful for gameplay because there's only like 7 games that support it, and most of them are Japanese only. It has some cool features, but it's not. You'd have to like get a whole bunch of people together to make it useful. Like some sort of convention scene or something to show it off would be neat, but like other than that, it doesn't really have that much of a practical purpose. Favorite Ubisoft franchise? I'm gonna go Far Cry. I have spent a lot of time playing Far Cry games. I love Far Cry. Modded Wii U over HDMI. What do you mean? I assume well, first of all, we know the Wii U can run GameCube titles under certain conditions. But most of as far as I'm aware, most of the ways that the Wii U can be modded to run GameCube titles is through the Wii mode, which would mean it's limited to the constraints of the Wii. So if you can get the Wii U itself to mod and replicate GameCube titles, then you might have something better. But I'm assuming now that the Wii U is incredibly hacked that that's quite possible, but I don't know that firsthand. What if Disney bought Sega? That would be difficult considering that Sega is a Japanese company, but if Sega wanted to be purchased by Disney, they could. But I mean, that's something that would have made sense in like 93. It doesn't make sense now. There's no reason that Disney would want Sega other than more brand recognition in Japan. So in Japan, Sega is fascinating because in the West, we just associate them with video games and we think of them as like this almost failed video game company that doesn't really do anything anymore. In Japan, they're more like an entertainment company. So they do weird things, like they own a hotel chain. You know, they do all that pachinko stuff. They don't just make video games. And they're much more successful there. Ironically, they're almost like a much less successful Japanese Disney. So that would be one argument you could make as to why Disney might be interested in them, just to have a stronger foothold in Japan. But Disney is one of the few American companies that actually does well in Japan. Like Mickey Mouse.
Hey everybody, I'm stupid popular in Japan. They fucking love me over there. I get their money, I get all that yen.
But yes, so they don't really need to acquire Sega for any real reason. When did we get all the gross questions? Man, nasty, nasty shit. I'm not even going to read them. I'm not even going to read them. I know that you said Resident Evil 2 is your favorite Resident Evil game, but what are your thoughts on Resident Evil 4? So, I've only tried to play Resident Evil 4 like twice. The first time I did it, I was doing it through like the first time I did it when I was much younger. It had just come out, and I don't know, I just didn't quite jump on it. My friend was playing it, and I was kind of like I was like watching him play it, and I would kind of try for a little bit here and there, but back then I wasn't really comfortable with the Resident Evil control style, even though that game was different. That was the whole point. I don't know, I just didn't quite get into it. I tried again years later when I was doing like a Resident Evil marathon, and I had gotten all the way through all the prior games, and I was like, it was time to play Resident Evil 4, and ironically, I was too into the old style of controlling at that point, and I don't know, I just kind of like lost interest, but that might have been partially because I was in the middle of a marathon, and I was just kind of like, whatever. Nice Mickey Mouse voice. Thank you. I play Mickey Mouse on a lot of very, very vulgar stuff. I do videos with just the Mickey Mouse voice. Google or search on YouTube for Disneyland Adventures on Game Society. You will see your childhood will be destroyed. I play Mickey Mouse, I play Stitch, and I just torture my friend with horrific jokes. Like, I don't mean like bad jokes. I mean like sexual innuendo to, well, it's not even innuendo. It's like right in your face. It's very, very violent. You're like I said, your childhood would be destroyed. Least favorite Mario game. Well, I've never been a fan of those like weird spin-off games, like the tennis ones. Like, those are well-made games, sure, but I'm sure a lot of people are thinking like, what about Hotel Mario or something like that? And I guess you kind of have to go with those type of games, like Mario's Time Machine and stuff like that. Never a big fan of those. But if you're talking about like the main ones, I'm just gonna say it: Super Mario Brothers 2 for the NES. I don't really like it. I know why. It was a completely different game, but I was just never really a fan of it. Why did GSP drop the P? So he's referring to the fact that my other channel, Game Society Pimps, which is now just Game Society, dropped the term pimps. Very simple. The YouTube algorithm now determines the word pimp to be negative, meaning Adpocalypse hit that channel really, really hard. And we were warned before Adpocalypse struck, like, you better get rid of this because some shit is coming. And they were right. So, like, Game Society's revenue fell like 80% because of its name. YouTube is just burying a lot of stuff, and it's getting way fucking worse now. Like, I can look at our videos, and I'll see they'll have like a green dollar symbol. That means it's monetized. Yellow means it's questionable and they want to talk to you and see if they can work it out. And black means that fuck your video, it's never monetizable. YouTube just rolled out a thing like 2 days ago where they just in mass started doing black dollar symbols to a whole bunch of videos, and we got hit with that over there. So that's bad. It's really bad over there, which sucks. It is what it is. So I actually appear in Game Society Pimps. Yeah, I'm there all the time. The thing is, I do more background operations over there because I'm better at that. That's, you know, but I do the Disney stuff because I can voice the characters. So I'm fully capable of all the comedic stuff. I just, you know, I prefer to not be doing that. What would you do if Disney sues you for vulgar Mickey Mouse? I'd be sad. I don't think they could really do that because it's just an impression. I'm not actually perpetrating as the character and pretending I really play him. If they were smart, they would just hire me to play him. You know, like, that would be cool. And obviously I would do their version, you know. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Disneyland. Spend some fucking money. Yeah, I wouldn't do that part, obviously. But, yeah. It's true, man. This dude's engaging. I don't know if you're talking about me or if you guys are talking about someone else, but if you are talking about me, thank you. You should do prank calls as Mickey Mouse. Well, guys, you want to see something cool? A fan of mine gave me this. It's like this messed up Mickey Mouse. It's all fucked up. Look at it. It's got no arms. He's been through the war. And the joke was that, I was installing a new child into the, it's a small world ride. The little fucker had a bomb. Fucking roadside bomb. He blew him off my fucking arms and my back. It sucks. Vulgar Mickey Mouse. So I just keep him up here. Crazy Taxi 4. That'd be nice. I don't think that'll ever be a thing unless you include those like PSP games like Fair Wars and stuff like that. That was nice, but I don't know if we'll ever get a true one because Sega doesn't really make games all that much. You guys still having fun with the stream? I got a few comments after the last one, which was was like 5 hours and 40 minutes. I got a lot of comments after it was over, like, why the fuck would you keep doing this? This is so boring, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't want to watch this. It's too long. What was your motivation? So if you guys aren't enjoying it, I'll just stop. It's up to you guys. Have I played Metal Gear Solid for the PS1? Many times. I actually prefer to play it on the Dreamcast using the Dreamcast release, the official one. It cleans it up much better, and it's great. It's obviously a fantastic game. Would you talk about Dreamcast motherboard with HDD and HDMI? I did, dude. I answered your exact question earlier. Thoughts on Angry Joe's fans revolting and having a vacation or break? Okay, so I talked about this in my podcast. Long story short, he's not wrong. He's not wrong to want to take a break, man. Like, video production is fucking hell. Like, I work 7 days a week across 4 different channels. I know what he's going through. His mistake was making promises he can't fulfill. That I can see why people are upset. When he would give them a pre-existing schedule and say, like, these are the target dates I'm going to hit, and he doesn't do it, I can see why they'd be upset about it. But he has every right in the world to take a little bit of a break. It's not even really a break. Like, all he's really doing is he's still working. He's just not doing massive amounts of production. So I understand that. But at the same time, I get the fan side of it. Is like, dude, I subscribed for the angry reviews, and I'm not gonna mince words here. Like, I too watch him for the angry reviews. Those are my favorite things that he does. I've met him multiple times. He's actually a really nice guy, despite his name. But he, you know, I get why he wants to do easier stuff to produce, because it takes so much time. Like, what I'm doing right now is fucking easy. You know, essentially, it's just me in front of a camera. But this will take the X amount of hours it takes to actually make the video, in addition to all the prep work I had to do going into it. That's something small, but like, you guys, unless you do video production, you have no idea how much extra horse shit goes into making stuff like that. And what Angry Joe does, his angry reviews, I completely understand why it takes him like a month to produce one. Those things are hell. And especially if you put one out and it doesn't get the kind of views you need, and especially in the adpocalypse era where you're now making like 20% of what you used to, it's really hard to justify continuing. So I get why he'd want to chill out a little bit, take a little bit of a break. He's been doing it consistently for 9 years. And give him a break, man. His break is still working. He's just not working quite as to the nth degree like he has been. Give him a break. He completely deserves it. Have I ever made a video on your reason behind maintaining a video game collection, or your thoughts on why you collect? Funny you mentioned that. That is a video I've actually had quasi in production for like 2 years. I don't know if it'll ever finally get produced. And what I mean by that is, as I mentioned, I travel a lot for different reasons, including going to St. Louis. Tomorrow morning, I'll be flying to St. Louis for the Missouri Game Con. Please come out. When I get the chance, I talk to a lot of collectors that I meet in different places. I've done interviews in Canada, in the UK, in other parts of the US, where I've been in people's, like, with them in their collections. I shot some footage actually last year at the Missouri Game Con with other collectors, basically proposing the same question to them and just getting an interview. And I want to, at some point, basically cobble it all together and release it. But I just haven't done it because, like, I want to get more people's perspectives, including my own, which, you know, I have to think through that too. But yeah, that's it's definitely something that has very much been considered. Did I watch the Emoji Movie? Of course not. The only story I have that's interesting in regards to the Emoji Movie is I was doing a live stream on Game Society. We were doing one after, we do what's called an after party, which is just for Patreon backers. And we were all just chit-chatting, and somebody said, oh my God, Patrick Stewart's going to be in something called the Emoji Movie. And my immediate reaction to that was, I guarantee you that's a Sony movie. And they're like, I don't, okay. Like, nobody really followed that. And then they Googled it, like, oh my God, it is going to be a Sony movie. I was like, I called it. Because only Sony would, Sony Pictures, you have to remember, Sony Pictures is not Sony PlayStation. They're both Sony, but they're different things run by different people. They're the same parent entity. One financially affects the other, but they're run by different groups of people. Sony Pictures is gloriously incompetent. And it was not hard to predict that that was going to be a movie they would have greenlit. And I was like, yep, there you go. And of course, it was like, that bombed. I could call that in advance. And of course it did. How do I donate through PayPal? So if you just go to paypal.com, log into your account, there's information in the description of this video that has my PayPal email address. Send whatever amount of money you want to that address, and I'll see it, and I will answer your question, your comment, whatever. The same thing goes for Super Chats. Personally, I prefer PayPal only because it doesn't take a cut, unlike YouTube, but it's 100% your choice. It's all completely voluntary. The only thing I can really do for you is just immediately answer your question as just a courtesy. But again, completely voluntary, not demanding it of anybody. There is no paywall. Would you go to Venezuela for a week in exchange for a ridiculously high amount of money? I mean, you're asking if I would be willing to take money to take a trip to Venezuela? Yeah. You're not asking me to go to North Korea. You're asking me to go to Venezuela. Venezuela is like a legitimate place. What the fuck is wrong with Sony Pictures? Are you asking that redundant or rhetorically, or do you actually mean that? Do you not know? Is Sony Pictures just desperate or stupid? They're kind of both. Desperation can make you stupid. Luigi's Mansion or Mario Sunshine? Luigi's Mansion. That shit is Resident Evil for kids. It was great. That was a great game. Way better than I expected to be. I remember the first time I played Luigi's Mansion, I thought it sucked. Because like everybody, I was like, what the fuck is this? This isn't my Mario. What is this? And then when I played it years later, I realized, no, man, this game was really good. Like, this was really awesome. Do you think Nintendo will release a Game Boy Classic? I think, well, okay, I could see them doing it, but I think what would actually be smarter on their part is if they released a Game Boy Classic collection for the Switch. Like, how fucking perfect would that be? You make the case look like an old Game Boy case, you make the cartridge kind of look like an old Game Boy cartridge, and you just include, like, you know, 30 or whatever of their old hits. How hard could that possibly be to write like an OG Game Boy emulator for the Switch? They could do that in 10 seconds. That would be moneymaker right there, and it would help push the Switch. So I think that's a good idea. I don't think releasing a Game Boy clone by itself is necessarily the way to go. But, you know, it's Nintendo. Their handhelds always sell, so maybe they could do it. Do you think Dreamcast would have retained third-party support if it had survived the whole generation? The reason why I ask is because GameCube had 1.5 gigabyte data discs and Dreamcast had 1 gigabyte. Close. GameCube had 1.2 gigabytes. Dreamcast actually had 1.1 gigabytes. So it has not a whole lot to do with the size. I mean, that's not that big of a deal. The problem is not even the third parties bailed. I mean, EA was never there to begin with. The problem was, and I've mentioned this in the past, what really killed the Dreamcast, when you break it all the way, you boil it all the way down, was, I don't remember the guy's name, but I remember seeing an interview with him on, I think it was like IGN did an interview where it was like, remember the Dreamcast or something like that. One of those like, what's that like channel that, not MTV, but like the other one. I forget what it's called. But anyway, they did some sort of like video about the Dreamcast. Maybe the Dreamcast? Whoa, how cool. They interviewed a guy who at the time was working for some magazine publication. And he had an interview with someone high up at Sega. The person who he was interviewing was Japanese, so he required a translator, or his English wasn't that good. Either way, like there was a communication problem. So what they were talking about was the Dreamcast production and what was coming up. And basically what the situation was that Sega had more Dreamcasts made than they expected to sell within a certain time frame. Yeah, VH1, thank you. VH1 is the channel I'm talking about. So yeah, it was VH1. But anyway, so they were talking about like how they had more Dreamcast units available than they necessarily needed right then and there. So what they had essentially done was, temporarily halt the production of the Dreamcast. This dude misinterpreted what the guy was saying because of a translation issue. He interpreted it to say that Sega had ceased production of the Dreamcast altogether, which was not true. But he wrote it that way to a Western audience. And I remember waking up that day back in 2001, reading that Sega had was done with the Dreamcast. They were ceasing production of it. Which even then I thought it was strange because they also followed it up with, but don't worry, there's still like 80 games that they're coming out with. And it's like, why would a company cut off their hardware and continue to support the software? That's the story they were going with, even though it wasn't really accurate. And because that story spread like wildfire, everybody's like, fuck the Dreamcast, then I'm not buying this thing, it's done. Which wasn't actually true. Had they not reported it so improperly, it's very possible they would have rode out the rest of that year just fine. And then the unfortunate snowball effect that had was at the time, and I have some old Dreamcast magazine somewhere to prove this, at the time, Grand Theft Auto 3, which would be the game that made the PlayStation 2 go from like, that thing's hard to program for and it's kind of expensive, to I have to own this as a gamer. That game at one point was in production for the Sega Dreamcast. Rockstar pulled it when they found out, just like everyone else did, that the Dreamcast momentum was done because of this, basically this faulty report. Fuck. That game could have been on the Dreamcast and that could have completely changed things. Really could have. So I don't know the dude's name, and it's not really his fault. Like, he had a bad translation. It happens. It's just a really fucked up thing that happened that really screwed everybody. So, it is what it is. Do you think the PlayStation 5 will come out in 2019? I suppose that's possible. I never thought they'd actually do a true PS5. We still don't know if they will. But I guess it is possible now. I mean, we wouldn't be that far. I mean, by that point, the PS4 will have had a nice, healthy lifespan by conventional standards. See, most people, unfortunately, I don't know your age range for most of you, but I would guess a lot of you grew up with the 7th gen, the Xbox 360, the PS3, and the Wii. And so you guys are used to this like freakish long generation where it's basically a decade long. Us old fucks know that that's not the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to get like 5 years tops out of a console. What happened with you guys is right when maybe like a year or so before the console should have updated, we had the big 2008 economic crash. And so all the companies had to be like, we can't release new hardware. Like, no one's going to buy it. So they had to just kind of milk those consoles a little bit longer. And because they did that, we essentially had 2 generations in 1 generation. So don't get used to that, though. That's not normal. And it's almost weird. Like, now we're getting like half generations. And I think that's almost like a weird way to compensate for that. So instead of like a 10-year cycle or a 5-year cycle, you're getting like 2 or 3-year cycles. Did I see Spider-Man Homecoming? Yes, I did. That movie alone was absolute proof that Sony Pictures does not need to exist. And they should never be allowed to make movies. And they should absolutely give Spider-Man back to Marvel. They won't, but that'd be nice. There's a lot of rumors that Sony Pictures is up for sale, that somebody's going to bite. The same with Paramount, by the way. This isn't like Sony bashing. Paramount's even more in deep shit, and they might be sold off to... there's some Chinese company that's looking into buying them. And Sony, I could see being purchased by Disney for the sole purpose of getting Spider-Man back, and then maybe gutting what other assets there are, and then just kind of giving Sony Pictures away in some sort of fire sale. Because in the long run, even if they buy Sony Pictures for like $3 billion, they'd still come out ahead, because Spider-Man, when done properly, can make a fuck ton of money on his own. And then you'd also acquire Ghostbusters and whatever rights to any other franchises Sony has that they haven't completely burned. Ghostbusters is burned for now, but it could be resurrected under proper conditions. Do my Donald Duck voice. I don't have one. That's not a character I'm capable of doing. I got Stitch and I got Mickey. Those are my Disneys. How long have we been going here? Almost 3 hours. I might end this at the 3 hour mark, guys. We're at 2 hours and 44 minutes. LOL. Actually, Paramount is owned by Warner Brothers. No, it's not. Paramount is its own thing. Warner Brothers owns Warner Brothers. They're competitors, dude. Paramount was at one time owned, I think they're currently owned by Viacom. Warner Brothers is not Viacom. So there's a channel, if you guys are curious about Paramount and you're curious about all this Sony stuff, the channel I recommend is a channel called Midnight's Edge. Those dudes are unbelievable at getting scoops on all this, you know, the movie politics and financial stuff. Like, you ever want to learn a lot about how movie studios work and like all the financial and stupid shit that especially went into a lot of Sony movies, check out Midnight's Edge. I can't recommend it enough. And go back and watch their like oldest videos to get to, like, don't just be like, oh, those are the old ones, I don't care. Trust me, go back, watch their stuff, like their story about how Fantastic Four, aka Fan4Stick, and how that movie and Fox, they totally fucked it up. You have to watch it. It's fascinating stories over there. You'll learn so much, and unfortunately probably become very jaded about how the movie industry works. But yeah, those guys, they know what they're doing. Those guys are really awesome. Midnight's Edge is amazing. Yeah, damn right they are. In your opinion, does Lon D get an ass kicking in Shenmue 3? Nope. You're lucky if you get that by Shenmue 4. My guess is you gotta wait till Shenmue 5, if either ever happen. Am I driving down to Southern Illinois to see a total eclipse? Nope. I'm going to St. Louis, which borders Southern Illinois. I'm going there tomorrow. As per tradition, if you guys are just joining us, I'm flying to a convention tomorrow. So as always, woo, flying out the night, doing a stream the night before I fly somewhere. I fly a lot. You know a lot, dude. It's hard to believe you aren't more well known. I only found out about you when trying to figure out how to open a GameCube. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You know, it's funny. I mentioned this in my restoring a crystal rare Final Fantasy GameCube video. I had to take apart the GameCube, clean it up, and put it back together, and I couldn't remember how to do it. So I was looking up like how to do it, and Google actually recommended my own video I had produced like 4 years earlier to me. So it's like, okay, that's funny. So I had to watch my own video and be like, that's right, all right. Why did I shoot it like that? Why did I, you know, my hand, what the fuck? You know, it's, you start criticizing your own work. I never really watch my own stuff after it's over. Are they still doing the Console Wars movie? Oh, fuck, I know what you're talking about. Wasn't that like a Seth Rogen, James Franco thing? Right now, all their efforts are focused on The Disaster Artist, which I am so fucking looking forward to that movie. But I think they are still going forward with that. The Console Wars was going to be like a Seth Rogen and James Franco, like one's a big Sega guy, one's a big Nintendo guy, like movie take place from the 90s. I don't know if it's still happening. I haven't heard anything about it. My guess is they'll wait until The Disaster Artist is completely done. Disaster Artist has been in production for years. So yeah, my guess is they want to finish with that. Check out the trailer for Disaster Artist if you've seen The Room. If you haven't seen The Room, it will make no sense whatsoever. Thoughts on the Ready Player One trailer? That looked pretty cool. I mean, Ready Player One is one of the few books I've ever actually absorbed. You know, like, I actually paid massive attention to that story. It's a really good book. If you haven't checked it out, check out Ready Player One. So watching the trailer, I got, you know, it was, for the first time ever, really, I was one of those people who was like, well, the book was much better than the movie. I fucking hate that. But you can kind of see it in that case, because, like, that whole book requires your imagination, and this, the trailer shows things that will be different than your imagination. And I also know that that's interesting, because Spielberg is referenced, his work is referenced a billion times in Ready Player One. But in the movie adaptation, which he is directing, he said he really limited his own personal references because he said he made him feel like too weird. But that said, you still see the Time Machine DeLorean in it, and he was the producer of that movie. He is like the reason that movie got made. So that might be his like one and only reference to himself. Am I going to bring the Switch to St. Louis? Dude, no. First of all, the flight to St. Louis is nothing. It's like an hour and a half. But I don't bring portable consoles to places because it's just extra shit you have to lug around, and I never really end up playing it anyway. Like, I have too many other things to do, so I don't want to risk damaging it and all that stuff. Like, I don't actually get the portable, you know, portability out of it. It just doesn't come up. Plus, odds are I'll come back with stuff, and then it's just taking up space that I could have used for other things. One thing I've noticed at conventions, this makes me sound like kind of a dick, and I always tell people you don't have to do this, but people do it anyway. When I go to conventions and stuff, a lot of people just give me things, and so that's got to go somewhere. So like I'll take it with me, and I'm limited to basically my backpack, so I can't bring stuff with me, otherwise I run out of space. What would happen if you had a kid who loved anime more than video games? It's fine. I'm not an asshole, dude. Like everyone's entitled to their own preference. If he likes anime or she likes anime or whatever, I don't care. I wouldn't share that passion, but I wouldn't be like, no, I have no son. Like, no, I wouldn't. I don't care. Will you use Uber in St. Louis? No, the convention's picking me up. The debate about is Switch really 9th gen or 8th gen? The jury's still out. I would argue it's 8th gen, because it's generations are hard to define because they're like one part technology and they're one part time frame, and no one ever really has a clear understanding of it until well after it's over. I would say it's 8th gen, and I would say Nintendo is the first company since SNK to have two consoles in the same generation. The Wii U and the Switch are both, in my opinion, 8th gen consoles. Now, I don't decide that, of course, but if I were to be the one deciding it, that's how I would say that it goes, because you can't really, I mean, from a technical standpoint, you can't make the argument that it's 9th gen because it's not more capable than 8th gen hardware. From a time frame standpoint, you can't even really make that argument either, because Xbox One X is coming out after, and I believe PS4 Pro, PS4 Pro came out before, but barely, and they're both vastly more capable. So it's like, that doesn't really count either. So I'm going to say that it's an 8th gen hardware. It's just like the Wii U. It's just the Wii U is the weaker of the two. It's not unprecedented. Like, you had the same thing. Atari did it with the 2600 and 5200. SNK did it with the AES and the CD. It just happens sometimes. Because they don't, it's not like Nintendo's sitting there thinking, well, we have to definitively draw a line as to where the next generation starts. They don't care about that shit. They care about making their own platform and how it will work best for them. They don't care about the generation lines. Come to Denmark. That would be fun. Beyond that, I have nothing to say. Like, yeah, that'd be cool. I'd be happy to go. But, like, I have no route there. And nothing is paid to get me there. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know what to tell you. I just got a donation on PayPal. This is from a Daniel Alcott. Thank you. Says, hey, Adam, this is my first ever donation. This might be an interesting question. Do you think that Sony is holding back on backwards compatibility because remakes and remasters are happening like Crash and Ratchet and Clank? First of all, thank you for the donation. Second, I think they're doing it because they have no reason to give you free compatibility. They will never give you free backwards compatibility because Microsoft did it because they knew the Xbox One could replicate the 360. Granted, it would be hard, but it could do it. And now they know they can do that with the OG Xbox easily. They could always have done that. So they give it to you as a freebie to make the console more appealing. Sony is already winning by a landslide. They don't have to do that to sell units, where Microsoft did because they were trying to get more people to jump over to Xbox, giving you more value, especially if you were a 7th gen Xbox user, meaning the 360. Sony can't do that with the PS3. It just can't. It's too complicated of hardware to try and properly replicate on the PS4. They could give you PS1 and PS2 support, but they won't. What they decided to do instead was they built the emulator, same shit. They did it the same way, but instead they sold them as digital titles, and people are paying for it. Because people are paying for it, they have absolutely no incentive to give that shit away for free. Especially a financially problematic company like Sony. They're not going to give away something that's actually earning them some money. So no, you'll never, especially if you're out there buying digital PS2 titles for the PS4, you are the fucking problem with that. Don't do that shit. That's why they'll never give it to you for free. Will you come to Brazil someday? That'd be nice, but it's the same thing. Like, the places I go are typically places I'm invited to or I have a free ride to for one reason or another. I do not, with the exception of Japan, I really don't ever pay my way anywhere. And even Japan, I got all sorts of discounts. So, you know, like, I'd love to go to Brazil, but, like, I have no specific reason to go. Will you come to Guam? That would be fun. Probably not the best time right now to go, given current tensions, but that'd be fun. I'd love to go to Guam. Thank you again, Daniel, for the donation. So you can, if you want to, you can donate through Super Chat, which is the little dollar symbol in the chat there. Donate any amount you want, and I'll answer your question. Whatever is the highest priority, you get it. And the same thing applies to PayPal. You can donate over there. There's information in the description of this video, which email address. Again, any amount you want, but it's completely voluntary. There is no paywall. Do as you please. I also, I know people hate this, and I mentioned this before, but I have a Patreon. You can do that instead, because for $5 a month, you get early access to everything. But people never jump on that. I want to ask you guys a question. Why do people not have that much interest in doing the Patreon route? Like people who donated tonight, which I appreciate, why not do the Patreon, which is generally less money, by the way, and you get early access to stuff? I'm genuinely curious why people don't do that. Is it just because it's Patreon? Like, I'm not asking for your money at this point. Now I'm just curious. Like, what is it? If someone paid you to go to North Korea, would you? No. In fact, effective September 1st, it will now be illegal for American citizens to visit North Korea. Much like the Cuban embargo, although that's kind of gone, although Trump kind of brought it back, whatever. I'm not trying to get political. It's just what happened. North Korea is now kind of the same thing. Plus, why the fuck would you want to go there? Like, why would you want to do that to yourself? The only way I would go to North Korea is through that little room. Are you guys familiar with that? If you are, then I won't talk about it. But if you've never heard of it, it's kind of an interesting thing. Do you prefer OG Xbox or Xbox 360? OG Xbox, definitely. I have more fun with it. I have more memories with it. I was more passionate. But that said, the Xbox 360 is fucking awesome. Like, I've often swapped between the two as to which is my fourth and fifth favorite console. It kind of depends on the day you ask me. But today, I'm definitely saying OG Xbox. Because OG Xbox created in me a passion to actually own all of it, where the Xbox 360 failed to do that. Largely because its library is too big. But, I don't know, the OG Xbox did that. So people are saying with Patreon, it's because it's a continuous payment. But that's the thing, it's not. Like, you can do it that way, or you can just pay once and never do it again. It's completely voluntary. Like, every month, you could just stop at any time of your choosing. I'm just curious. That's, like, because I guess there's a lot of misconceptions about how that works. But, you know, to each their own. What's my favorite? Laudmont says, who would you say is your personal favorite console maker of the current generation? Nintendo. Easily. Because I like them for the unique factor, which is obvious. But also, I frankly have the best time with their games. And Sony and Microsoft are basically offering you the same thing in slightly different colors. You know, that's about it. But obviously people are going to have their own opinions on that. Favorite OG Xbox game? If we don't include Shenmue 2, which I wouldn't, then I would go Star Wars Battlefront 2. Why haven't cartridges made a comeback similar to what vinyl has? I mean, in a sense they did, because the Switch kind of uses it. But if you mean like conventional old school cartridges, because of the technology being expensive and limited, so there's no real reason to do that. So that's probably why, because cartridges are also very specific to a platform, whereas vinyl is not. You know, it's anybody can make a record player, anybody can make a fucking record, whereas only Nintendo is going to make Nintendo 64 cartridges. So this is a good answer in regards to the Patreon thing. I haven't signed up for Patreon, but since it's a subscription, I have the same feeling as signing up for random apps. Something you forget is billing you, and there's unlimited things to try. See, that's interesting. I get that. See, that actually makes sense to me. It's from a financial perspective, it doesn't quite add up as the same as same thing, because you're getting more for the money. But I get why you would just say, like, yeah, I might just fucking forget that I'm still supporting this. I get that. Will you pre-order Shenmue 3? I don't have to. I technically I did. I mean, I'm a Patreon, or I'm Patreon. I'm a Kickstarter backer for it, so I'm all set. What's your favorite SpongeBob video game? I don't know if I have one. Do you like war films? Yes, I do. My favorite standalone film of all time, like not part of a franchise like Star Wars, Back to the Future, whatever. My favorite standalone film of all time is a German movie called Downfall, which is about the basically the final days of World War II in Berlin, like what Hitler and all the stuff in the bunker, what they were doing. That movie is amazing. And the story of it is fascinating because, like, for years, nobody really knew what had happened down there. And as it turns out, Hitler's secretary had been down there. She had, like, recorded everything that had happened. And she had bailed and just kind of, like, hid out for years. And then eventually, like, when she was old, she just kind of came forward with, like, yeah, here's everything that happened down in the Fuhrer bunker. And so they took that, basically those notes, and they made a movie out of it. And it's a really good movie. I actually, funny enough, I went to, when I was in Berlin a couple of weeks ago, you can go to the remains of the Fuhrer bunker, but they don't want to glorify it, which is understandable. So there's not really much there. It's a parking lot now. But they put like a sign in front of it that basically said, like, yeah, here's everything that happened. Yes, we know it was bad, but they acknowledge its existence. So you can check it out. It's just a thing, but like they don't, and I don't blame them at all for that. They just don't glorify its existence, which they most certainly shouldn't. But the Fuhrer bunker itself is fascinating as a concept because there was like 3 times in history that they tried to destroy it. The Germans, the Russians, I think the Americans made an attempt too. But they couldn't. Like, it's too well constructed, which is fucking weird. So what they just did was put stuff over it. What's the last official Dreamcast game you got? Like, the last one I ever found that was a GD-ROM game to complete my set. Groen no Torikagu Capital 6 Senritsu. Say that 3 times fast. Japanese game that was only sold through Sega Direct, and supposedly only 200 copies of it were ever made. Sega Direct was kind of like Club Nintendo for Sega, in Japan only. What's your thoughts on The Thing with Kurt Russell? Believe it or not, I've never seen it. I know that's kind of sacrilege. I should watch it, but I've never seen it. If you couldn't live in Canada or the US or where your girlfriend lives, which is Portugal, where would you live? Well, since I can only speak English, I'm kind of limited to English-speaking nations, meaning like the UK, Australia, New Zealand, stuff like that. I could probably function decently in parts of, like, Germany and stuff, because most Germans speak English. It would probably either be Australia or somewhere in Europe, would be my guess. If I couldn't live in the US, then yes, logically so, my second choice would be Canada. But apparently we can't count that. I don't know, it's kind of hard for me to commit to a country, I don't know. I'm guessing it would be somewhere in Europe, though. I don't know if it'd be the UK, though, just because I don't think I could ever get used to driving there. Can you please answer my question? I don't know what your question was. Will Matt Sloan be in Star Wars Battlefront 2? Matt Sloan's my buddy who voices Darth Vader for video games and stuff. I don't know the answer to that. If they have Darth Vader in it, maybe? Like, I don't know. He hasn't told me. Have you ever been offered a job in the video game industry? Yes. Leave it at that. Second favorite game of all time? Probably Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Sega Genesis. That might be partially nostalgia talking, but I fucking love that game. You said you're not into PC gaming, but do you have a PC capable of gaming? Yes, this one. Will Star Wars burn out as a franchise? I'm actually legitimately worried of that possibility because they're kind of Star Trekking it, where they're throwing you way too much content too quickly, and I think people might actually get burned out. Star Wars is I wouldn't call it fragile because it's not, but like it's always been kind of shielded from all that kind of stuff. Like it's always been good at always maintaining popularity, but it does need a break. And as much as I'd love personally to see a new Star Wars movie every year, the masses won't. And you gotta give it a pause. And I hope Disney, like, after they complete the new trilogy, like after episode 9 comes out, I would hope they take like 5 years off. They might, because audiences might start seeing fatigue. Like, don't be surprised if we start seeing slower and slower returns on these movies. And then they might just take a logical break to let people catch up, because the ones that did the best were the ones that had come in after a long hiatus. Like, believe it or not, Phantom Menace, and of course Force Awakens. Like, I understand when Force Awakens made like $2 billion why Disney was like, yes, let's just keep this money train rolling. Like, I get why they thought that, but slow it down. Rogue One did fine. I liked Rogue One. A lot of people didn't. And in hindsight, a lot of people are starting to realize that Force Awakens really wasn't as good as we all thought it was at first. And I when you look into what's coming up, like the Han Solo movie, I've said this multiple times. I don't want a Han Solo movie. I don't give a fuck about a Han Solo movie, and I love Star Wars. So I don't know how the mass audiences are going to react to that one, and I don't know how well that's going to do. And now we know there's a shit ton of production problems with it. I will say I'm excited about Episode 8, but it better be not just a remake of The Empire Strikes Back. Because otherwise it's like, why are you even doing this? What do I think of the Turkish Star Wars movie? I know what you're talking about, but I've never seen it. Thank gosh it's still alive. Or the show's still alive. Yeah, probably not for much longer. What are we at? We're just over 3 hours. I said I'd probably stop at 3. I will give you guys, I don't know, let's go for a little bit longer, and then I'm probably going to bail because I still have to pack up and stuff for the Missouri Game Con. And to be honest with you, I'm getting kind of tired. I'm almost out of coffee, too. Favorite character in Star Wars? I don't know, man. That's I guess the obvious answer is, unfortunately, my actual answer, which is Darth Vader. I mean, I know it's like, oh, okay, that's like, any layman can say that, but yeah, I would be better off like maybe answering like what my favorite character is from any individual film as opposed to the entirety of the universe. And that's typically how you can tell like which movie was the best. Like, I think about Empire Strikes Back, and I think, okay, yeah, my favorite character in that is Vader. And then I think to like, Return of the Jedi, and it's Luke. A New Hope, it's probably, I'd like to say Luke, but I don't think that's accurate. It's probably more like Han. But then you think like the prequels, I go, okay, Obi-Wan is probably the best from Revenge of the Sith. And then you think Phantom Menace, and you go, well, that one's really hard, but you think like maybe Qui-Gon, but even that is like, not really. Like, there's really no good characters in Phantom Menace. But then I've actually struggled with that before, and I've thought about like, who's the best character in Attack of the Clones? Like, I really, really, really had to think about that, because nobody is interesting in that movie. And then I realized my favorite character in that movie is someone who most of you won't even know. You'll probably have to Google this character. But I'd say it was Poggle the Lesser. Even though he has almost no screen time, he's probably the most interesting character in the entire film. And largely it's you have to know the things he did in canon outside of the movie for him to truly be interesting. Favorite color? If black counts, which is technically a shade of gray, then black. If not, green, like Green Ranger green. Have I recorded the August podcast yet? Will Chip be in it? Yes, it's actually public to everyone on Patreon already. No, Chip is not in it. Have I seen fan edits of the prequels? Yes, I have. I've seen some that are kind of better, and then I've seen some that are definitely worse. Some of the, particularly the Revenge of the Sith ones, are the best because they cut out some of the awful scenes between Padme and Anakin, and they added back in the scenes between Padme and like when she's getting the rebellion formed. If you don't know, so in Revenge of the Sith, there was an entire subplot where they actually gave Padme something to do. She gets together with Bail Organa, played by Jimmy Smits, and they get Mon Mothma, who is actually the same actress who plays her in Rogue One. That's the same actress. They had all these scenes about them, you know, basically working together to figure out how to form a rebellion. And so they basically decide together, like, look, you have to keep this super secret. No one can ever talk about this. You can't, you know, and she's like, well, can I talk to the Jedi? Like one in particular, meaning Anakin. And they're like, absolutely not. So she's conflicted with this whole movie with like lying essentially to her boyfriend, who at that point is at his most emotionally fragile. And so it works a lot better because then when they get to that scene where he like chokes her and stuff, he can sense that she's lying. She is. And in that scene, he thinks she's like cheating on him with Obi-Wan, which makes no sense in the final version of the film because as far as the audience knows, she's not lying about anything. She's the whole time, all she's done is just been pregnant. That doesn't make any sense. But in the original cut of the storyline, she was lying, and he could tell that. He just assumed it was about Obi-Wan as opposed to what it actually was. And then that one scene where she's talking to him, she's like, have you ever considered we might be on the wrong side? Like, it was all a lot more motivated. But George ended up cutting it out because it was like an extra 20 minutes to a movie that was already too long. And so the fan edits keep that in, while they typically take out that horrible fucking balcony scene where the two of them just talk about how much they love each other. I'm in love with you. No, I am so in love with you. No, I'm in love with you. Oh my God, that scene is putrid. So I wish they had done that differently. They also did that like Yoda scene where Yoda goes to Dagobah and stuff. And that scene, I wish he had kept in the film, but he apparently decided not to because he felt that the ending should have only been about the Skywalkers. I disagree with him on that, but you know, he's George Lucas. He can do whatever the fuck he wants. Or he could. Fix your Bulls jersey. Fix your Bulls jersey. How about that? Will I buy the new Genesis being released in Brazil? Probably not. Like, I would have no way to get it. You know, I'm not going to Brazil anytime soon. I have no one who would ship it to me. Plus, I believe it's with power and video output problems, it would be really difficult for me to use. The thing I want from Brazil, actually, is they're re-releasing, I think it's Surgical Strike. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. There's a Sega CD 32X combo game that was only released in Brazil, and it's super hard to find, but it's being re-released or has been re-released down there exclusively. I'd love to get my hands on that. That said, I have no way to do that, though. Hey Adam, I just wanted to say I've been watching your content for years and have always helped me out on something involving the understanding of how a certain console works. So thank you. You're welcome. Do you remember Gotham Games in Lincoln? They moved and now they have 2 floors with a small arcade. Yeah, dude, I've been in there. I think I even filmed a video with it. I was with my buddy Ben Shenmue. Like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we went to the old one. Then they moved, so last year we were in the newer one. Yeah, I've been in there. I bought games in there. I bought my why am I spacing on the name? Probably because I'm tired. Oh my fuck. What is that? What is the name of it? I feel like an idiot. The British exclusive console. Somebody help me with this. I can't believe it. The SG. No, not the SG-1000. That's Sega. GX-4000. Sorry. The GX-4000. I bought one of those in there, boxed. Since I'm starting to forget the name of consoles, it's probably time to go. We've been at 3 hours and 15 minutes. Tell you what, I'm going to do 15 minutes more. We'll go to 3.5 hours. I'm going to check out. So, yeah, GX4000. Thank you, Tristan. Yeah, so we'll do power round questions, super chats, PayPals. We'll take priority, but if that's, you know, otherwise we'll just do regular questions. It's up to you guys, whatever you want to do. But, yeah, we'll go for like 15 more minutes. So thank you to everybody who's been here so far. And I hope you've had fun. Now let's get on with let's do the final countdown here, shall we? Do you think the voice acting will be better in Shenmue 3? Hopefully. All right, so I've hung out with Corey Marshall. Corey Marshall is the voice of Ryo Hazuki, and I've talked to him about that exact thing. And what he told me is when they did the recording for the first 2 games, basically Sega was very insistent that he perform it the way it is performed, which he says he kept telling them, like, look, and all the other English speakers kept telling them, like, that doesn't make sense in English. It doesn't really work that way. And Sega was very insistent, like, no, we're just doing a direct literal translation. And so they were like, all right. So that's why so many of the lines sound unnatural. Whether or not they learned their lesson is hard to say. We will find out. So I don't have any information on that, but that we'll see, man. But that's apparently the reason it is the way it is originally. If someone donated $1,000, would you do a 24-hour stream? I would have to plan for that. Of course, nobody's going to do that, but I would have to plan for it. I could not do it this time, only because I have to go to... Well, I don't have to go. I want to go. But I am going to St. Louis in the morning for the Missouri Game Con, so I'm literally not going to be around for 24 hours to do that. I mean, to do something like that, you'd have to plan it. Like, I'd have to post and be like, hey, guys, I'm considering doing a 24-hour live stream. Someone donates $1,000. Then you just kind of get into, like, a weird territory where I don't think anybody would ever do that. So, no. I mean, I'd be, I guess, open to it conceptually, but it doesn't matter because no one's going to do that. What do you think about Joy in Shenmue 2? I prefer her Japanese version. I don't typically, with the exception of Corey himself and his performance, I didn't think that most of the English dubs were particularly good, but now I know why that is. So it's kind of like, well, you can't really judge that because there is a director there telling him to act bad, essentially. As a character, I find her strange. Her motivations are strange. But, you know, you don't have enough information on her yet. Do a room tour. No. It's so never going to be a thing unless it's my last video ever. My problem with room tours is doing a room tour is like, hi, internet, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, that's such a bad idea because, like, the second you do it, A, it's out of date if you continue to collect things. And B, you show everybody everything you have nowhere to go at that point. That's like, congratulations, I don't want to have a successful channel, is do a room tour. Bad idea. Bad fucking idea. You only do that if, like, you know, you're ready to stop. That's why I would do it then. Mm-hmm. Would you buy a Wii controller one day? It's a controller, Adam. I have Wiimotes. I own them. I don't understand the question. How's YouTube's adpocalypse? As I mentioned today, it has gotten substantially worse because they basically cut like everybody's revenue massively. Like Game Society, my other channel, took like an 80% hit. I took like a 50% hit. And then YouTube tried to fix this in the dumbest way I've ever heard of. They didn't really explain what their fix is. They just explained what they're doing now. So when you get hit with adpocalypse, a few different things can happen. Either they put shittier ads on your videos because there's less demand now because there's less advertisers, so that's why your percentage falls. But in an effort to appease ad companies, they decided, okay, we'll go through YouTube and figure out which videos can't qualify. So they started, you know, demonetizing and flagging all sorts of videos and saying, hey, we're going to go through this process where if your video has an issue we have or advertisers have, we'll let you know, and then we'll try to work together to fix the problem. That's what they were doing for a little bit. A couple of days ago, they basically just decided, you know what? Fuck your video. We don't even care. It doesn't meet our standards. So now it has a black mark in front of it, which means it's unfixable. If it has a green little icon in front of it, it means it's monetized and everything's fine. It may not be worth shit because they didn't actually fix the problem of getting more advertisers. If it has a yellow mark, it means it's not monetized, but theoretically is fixable. And if it has a black mark in front of it, it means it cannot be fixed. Fuck you, kill yourself. Your video is never going to make money on our platform no matter what. So we got a bunch of those the other day, the black ones on Game Society, and it really sucks because they're like, you can't do anything about it. It's annoying as shit. We just got a super chat from Richard. He says, favorite light gun game and system. I want to say Duck Hunt because that's like the obvious one, but actually, I remember the first time I played the Sega Master System, I was playing Safari Hunt, and I had never heard of it when I first tried it. It just came with the console. And I remember thinking, this is fucking great. This is so much better than Duck Hunt. While that's, I'm sure, not by any stretch of the imagination the best light gun game ever produced, it is probably my favorite. I was never big on light gun games, and especially now that you can't really play them for the most part, at least the classic ones, that might have to kind of win by default. But I mean, there's definitely higher quality ones made, like House of the Dead 2 and stuff like that. So I think I'm going to go with Safari Hunt just to kind of be strange about that answer. But better ones made were probably things like House of the Dead 2. Although, if you include arcade ones, I will have to go with the Lost World Jurassic Park game. That game is the shit. That game was fucking awesome. It was the only good thing to come out of that horrible fucking movie. Thank you for the super chat, Richard. Have you seen Breaking Bad? Yes, I have. I've got all seasons on Blu-ray. I've only watched the first season of the spinoff, Better Call Saul, but I know they're, in the second or third season now? I need to do that. What would you do if someone super chatted you to watch anime? Well, I would thank them, but I wouldn't do it because I'm not performing. I'm not like, oh, yes, sir, I will go off and watch anime right now. Like, I would thank you, but I never said I was willing to do that. So if I said to you, hey, guys, I will totally watch a clip of anime for $100 right now, who's going? Then if somebody did it, yes, I would be responsible for doing that. But I'm not asking you to do anything. You can donate if you want to. It's completely voluntary. There's no paywall, but that doesn't mean I'm going to, like, perform tricks. And that, not one of them. Do you think a new Jet Set Radio game is likely? Not really. I don't even know. The development team who made it doesn't exist anymore. So Sega just has a license to it, and what they'll do with it, you know, probably nothing. I do think that Jet Set Radio Future, the Xbox version, will probably be made Xbox One compatible. And that might have to satisfy you because I don't think you're going to get anything else out of it. Laudmont just super chatted. Thank you. If you had $1 trillion, would you donate a portion to Sega so they could make a new console? No. Instead, I would buy if for some reason. First of all, I would not do anything with Sega if I had $1 trillion. I'm going to keep it real with you. But if that was a condition of the money, was you have to do something to reinvigorate Sega with this money in addition to whatever your share of it is. What I would do is buy up massive amount of shares of Sega. That way I have greater control over what they do. And if there was that kind of money to play with, then I would start tinkering. But I don't really think it's in their best interest to try and make a full on console ever again. Especially with consoles on their way out, in a sense. So short answer is, I guess, no. But I would try to have them do other things. 8:25 here in Chicago. Yes. Well, it's 8:26 here in Chicago. I'm in Chicago too. Thank you for the super chat, Laudmont. Do you wear your Shenmue leather jacket? No, I do not. I used to wear a Shenmue hoodie. I had 3 of them, but somebody was desperately wanted to buy one from me, the one I was wearing. So I was like, okay. So the other 2 are sealed, and I never bothered to get around to it because I have a bunch of hoodies, I have a bunch of jackets. I don't need to wear merch. I prefer to collect anyway. How long is the time between when a video is done and when it's uploaded? That completely depends on the video. Like this video, for example, obviously is a live stream. So the second it's done, it will process and it'll become public so you guys can all watch it. If a video is, typically what I do is in my workflow of regular videos, as soon as I'm done with the video, 100% completed on the video, I upload it, and then it just kind of sits there and gets scheduled into a time frame. And unless you're on the Patreon perk, you just see it when it cycles out. On Patreon, you typically get it like 2 or 3 days earlier. But yeah, it's hard to say, because sometimes like I'll be really efficient and I'll do a whole bunch of videos in one block, and then they'll just sit there for literally sometimes months. And then other times it's like Playload, for example, obviously the idea is that it comes out at the end of the month or the very beginning of the next month. And so you really have to shoot that like the day before you put it out. But something like the Neo SD review I did, like I shot that, I probably finished that video like 3 weeks before it came out. It just depends on what it is. And then there's some stuff I shot based on my trip in Japan. The last video of that has not come out yet. There's no more like tour or store videos, but there was an item I got that I did a video on that I finished, and it's going to come out this month sometime. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but once it comes out, I don't even remember, I think it will be the last video ever on my channel to feature the old intro. You know, like, this is part of our quick shoot series, like, because that audio clip was destroyed in an unfortunate hard drive failure, so that's unrecoverable. But the video was finished and uploaded before that happened. So I think that video will be the last time ever that you ever get to hear that. Joe, that's not how Super Chat works. And I'm actually going to not read your question just because it's kind of dickish to think that's how that works. How's net neutrality going to affect YouTube? If net neutrality is removed, that will be destructive, to say the least. If Atari can do it, Sega can do it. Atari didn't do it. Do not believe for a second that Atari, the company from the late 70s, early 80s, is coming back. That's so unbelievably hideously inaccurate. I talked about that right at the beginning of this, but I'll mention it again. Basically, Atari is a non-existent company. Somebody owns the name and the likeness, and they're willing to cut deals to make other shit have the Atari logo on it. Like those headphones or whatever that's coming out, that's just some headphone company got together with whoever the fuck owns Atari and says like, hey, you know what would be kind of cool if we put Atari's name on this? People will think Atari's making something, and then we have like a hook to sell our headphones. That's all that shit is. And with the Atari box, Jesus Christ, like, that is just a clone console piece of shit. Like, it's not a competitive thing. To think Atari, a completely dead company, could compete on the multi-trillion-dollar level type of money that Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo, not literally trillions, but fuck, it's close. The amount of, like, resources that those companies have and they put into modern gaming, to think Atari, a company that's owned by, like, one guy and his name, that's absurd. It's not happening. Atari is not back. It's just a nostalgia thing being pushed on you by some guy who owns the name. That's all that is. If you ever want to, you can download your old videos and get the clip of it. That's not how that works. He's referring to the audio problem that I was mentioning where that audio clip's gone. The problem is when you make a video like that, there's multiple audio layers. There's the voice track that I recorded that's just a clean take of my audio. Then there's music. Then there's other music. Then there's sound effects. The video that you hear is all of them meshed together. You can't separate them. The original clip of just my voice speaking is gone. It's not recoverable, unfortunately. Believe me, I tried. Ugh. Last swig of coffee. Pretty perfect timing. We'll go here in a couple of minutes. Did you play E.T. for the Atari 2600? Yes, I've played it before. It's terrible, but to say it's actually the worst game of all time is not accurate. It's just something people say because it's such like a trivia type of question. There are worse games out there. Yes, it sucks, but it's not the worst thing ever made. Favorite sports game? Actually, funny, the thing I've played the sports game I've played the most, as weird as it sounds, Space Jam for the PS1. There's also a Saturn version, but I played the shit out of it on the PS1 back when it came out. because back then Michael Jordan wasn't in anything. Like he was very protective of his likeness for video games. So that was the only thing he had allowed himself in, is because it was like his movie. And so you could play as Michael Jordan. And I was like, oh shit. So I played the fuck out of that, and then realized later, of course, it's the boring as shit game. There's not really much to it. But when I was a kid, it was amazing. All right, we are in the final minute here, so let's go out with a good question. Something good. So it's going to take me a minute to kind of pick one. Unless anybody just decides to super chat or PayPal, then you automatically win. But otherwise, we'll just go with the best question I find. Let's see here. All right, I'm going to pick this one. It's all right. So the question is, this is gonna sound like weird because it's not that. No offense, it's not the greatest question, but it does open the possibility to talk about something else. Will I ever come to Connecticut? Well, first of all, I've been to Connecticut, but the reason I decided to pick this one is because so I've made a video in the past a couple months ago, basically saying all the opportunities in which you could meet me this summer if you wanted to. I've done a few of those events, but there's a few more now, and so I want to give you guys an update. Basically, you can meet me actually tomorrow. I'm going to St. Louis for the Missouri Game Con. So if you're anywhere in the St. Louis area and you want to meet me, you can come on down there. And the additional update to that is I'm not sure about this yet, I might be in Dallas for, I think it's the Quake convention. In 2 weeks from now. I might be at that. If that gets confirmed, I'll post about it on like Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff. I will be at PAX West in Seattle, so you can come to that. What is this? A lot of people are talking about how Kevin had a good question, so I'm very curious to see what that question is. So please feel free to repost that, Kevin. But anyway, I'll be at PAX West in Seattle, so you can meet me at that if you want to. And a few days later, I'll be at AVGC in Parsippany, New Jersey. You can come to that as well. So multiple opportunities coming up. Retropalooza, I was not invited to, so I don't think that that'll be a thing anytime soon. But if they invited me, I mean, like, yeah, hell yeah, I'd go. But yeah, I don't know. Kevin apparently asked me about what my favorite brand of socks is. I don't have a favorite brand. I'm sorry. Let's just say white ones or black ones. I don't care about like I wear socks, but I have no special brand. I'm sorry. So I guess that's it. We'll go out with the socks question. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you to everybody who donated through PayPal and Super Chat. You guys are awesome, and you guys are also awesome for just watching. I really do appreciate it. So you'll have I can't remember what the next video is off the top of my head. Actually, give me 1 second. I'll tell you if I can pull up my channel here. I have a video coming out in 5 days. 5 days from now, you guys will have a new video from me. It's a Dreamcast video. Ooh. But yeah, so that'll be fun. Anyway, yes, thank you guys for watching. Thank you again, everybody, and I'll see you all later.